with this brisk wind across eastern and southern England. Goodbye.
Looks like things are heating up. Boxed boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Good afternoon, Britain.
Good afternoon, Britain. Join us, Tom and Emily,
To find out what's happening in the heart of Westminster.
and why it matters to you.
Weekdays from midday, we bring you the most compelling stories from across the United Kingdom.
And from your doorstep to our inbox,
That's right, we want to hear from you,
GB News.
Britain's news channel.
Wake up to the headlines with Headliners every morning at 5 a.m. We treat you to the day's biggest stories before anyone else, 7 days a week. You can catch up on everything you need to know before you've even had your kippers. Headliners every morning at 5 a.m. only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
GB News, unlike other broadcasters, isn't obsessed with the London-Westminster bubble. We think there's a nation beyond the M25, and that's why we talk about the issues that matter across the land. Join me on State of the Nation, 8 to 9 o'clock, Monday to Thursday, on GB News. Daisy's listening, and you should too.
In the GB Newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens. With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK, we're ready to give you accurate reporting every day. When the news breaks, we'll be there with bulletins on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Big news, big debates, big opinion. Patrick Christie's Tonight is the week's biggest show. Every weekday, 9 to 11 p.m, we've got the inside track on the day's top stories. There'll be sharp takes you won't get anywhere else. We will set the news agenda, not just follow it, and I want to bring you along for the ride. Whatever it is, we'll have our finger on the pulse. It's news, but it's this close to entertainment. Patrick Christie's Tonight, 9 to 11 p.m, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Your weekend starts here with Friday Night Live with me, Mark Dolan, 8 till 9 on GB News. Big stories, big guests and big laughs as we get you ready for a cracking weekend. That's Friday Night Live with Mark Dolan, Fridays 8 till 9 on GB News. Bring your own drinks, the admission's free.
Tired of the usual focus-tested, pre-prepared Westminster runaround? Well, so am I.
So you want higher taxes?
Is your department to blame for this? Are you rethinking this policy? Every Sunday at 9:30, I'll be sitting down with those in power to get the truth about the issues affecting you.
Let's be honest, we've known about the cost pressures of this project for years, not months.
That's the Camilla Tominey Show, a politics show with personality. On GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my two comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Good morning to you. It's 6 o'clock on Saturday, the 6th of January. Today, after a week of wild weather battering Britain, Labour have accused the Prime Minister of being asleep at the wheel as thousands of Brits face flood damage.
More bad news for the Prime Minister with another by-election on the way as former Energy Minister Chris Skidmore resigns.
A New Year's gift from Jeremy Hunt. Cuts to national insurance come into force today in a bid to boost the Tories' electoral chances.
now we've turned a corner, brought down inflation, the economy's doing better, we want to bring down the tax burden, and this 2% cut will make a very big difference to many families up and down the country.
Aidan McGee's here with your sport.
Yes, indeed. Good morning. It's a big weekend of FA Cup action with Sunderland hosting North East rivals Newcastle at the Stadium of Light at 12:45. And in boxing, Anthony Joshua has learned the identity of his next opponent.
And with all your weather forecasts throughout the morning, here's Alex Burkill.
I think most of us are hoping for something a little bit drier, and the good news is that is going to come this weekend. But it's also going to turn colder. I'll have the details shortly.
Good morning to you. I'm Stephen Dixon.
I'm Pip Thompson, and this is Breakfast on GB News.
I probably shouldn't be here this morning.
Why'd you say that?
Because, and this is no word of a lie, I've won the lottery.
No way.
I have won the lottery.
And how much? That's the main question. Is it £10?
The only reason I came in is because you can't log in to see how much you've won till about 5 o'clock. So I thought, well, I'm going to have to turn up anyway. And I checked it before.
We're all going to be on our edge of the seats throughout this show, wondering how much you've potted.
Big lottery winner. Would you believe it?
Big lottery winner.
£2.60. Hey, it's 10p more than I paid for the ticket.
OK, you're
So
not
I'm in the money.
You're not out of money.
Yeah, 10p up.
Well, congratulations.
You
Your day is made.
I'm very pleased. It doesn't take much. Anyway, look, we all need something to smile about this morning because it is turning out to be a brutal winter. For those of us struggling with storms, flooding and potentially some further heavy rain and snow on the way, things are just looking worse.
A cold weather alert has been issued by the UK Health Security Agency, with temperatures set to plummet over the coming days.
Now, over the last few days, hundreds of homes have been devastated by flooding following a powerful storm and a week of heavy rainfall.
There are now more than 250 flood warnings in force, most of which are in the Midlands, East Anglia and southern England, with residents forced to evacuate their properties.
Of course, it's got political. The Labour Party has accused the Prime Minister of being asleep at the wheel over their flood response as they urgently demand the government convene a Cobra-style task force to protect homes from further damage.
GB News' Jack Carson has this report from Ironbridge in Shropshire.
Well, Storm Henk continues to have its impact here in Shropshire. Here in Ironbridge, where I am, the River Severn has burst its banks along multiple parts in this village. Luckily, the flood defences that were put up back at the end of December have been able to hold back a large volume of the water from getting to the village shops. But on the opposite side, houses have been flooded. Further upstream, the Boat Inn, which is a pub, has been flooded for the third time this year. And the environmental agencies say across the country, 1,000 properties have been impacted by flooding. In the Midlands, particularly in Nottinghamshire, a major incident, of course, was declared over the concerns in the rising levels of the River Trent, levels not seen previously since 2000. That is because of the other rivers that go into the Trent, particularly like the River Derwent, also reaching their peak levels, forcing that volume of the Trent upwards. That did also mean that a local over 55s caravan park on the outside of the city did have to be evacuated. But it is better news for the coming days because of the high pressure coming into the UK in terms of the weather. It's going to be a lot drier, and that of course is good news because the ground is so saturated because of the impact of Storm Henk, and that's why we've seen the kinds of flooding that we have seen over the last few days. So better news, dry weather is on the way, but the UK Health and Security Agency warning of a cold snap and plummeting temperatures and urging people to stay safe on the roads.
Well, let's talk to weather guru Nathan Rao, who's here in the studio. Morning, Nathan.
Good morning.
All right, look, we know where we are. What's coming?
Yes, the main story at the moment is, of course, the flooding. And as your reporter mentioned, there are a couple of hundred flood alerts in place, a couple of hundred flood warnings in place, and the Environment Agency reckons that the flood risk is going to last for the next 5 days or so. So really the story for the next few days is going to be flooding as this flood water recedes. Now, the good news is that the stormy weather, and we have had the 8th wettest December on record, according to the Met Office, and some parts of the country have had double the amount of rainfall than they would usually have at this time of year. But the good news is it is calming down. Now, low pressure is responsible for storms and rain, and that's what we've had, and we are now getting high pressure. The bad news is that it is going to turn colder. If you like the cold, I suppose that's good news. But with all of this flood water in place at the moment, if the temperatures do dip below freezing, we're going to be looking at ice and icy roads and things like that. So there is a change on the way. There's quite a dramatic change on the way. You are going to start noticing the mornings, the days getting much, much colder from this weekend onwards. There is a UK Health Security Agency warning in place. That's a health warning, really advising people who are more at risk of the extremes of weather, the elderly, those with existing health conditions, just take extra care as those temperatures plummet through this weekend and into next week.
Because in some parts of the country, Nathan, it's been hard to know where the rivers actually begin and end.
Yeah.
Over the next few days, we will likely see these rivers start to recede?
Yes. Now, the main affected rivers are the River Severn and the River Trent in Nottinghamshire. These are the ones that we've been looking at a lot, and they have apparently peaked. So there is a bit of a lag effect, but hopefully with no more rain, and there isn't a lot of rain, there's a bit of shower in the forecast, they will start to recede. But what we've been seeing with this intense deluge that we've had really since before Christmas is this flooding. There are 4 main types of flooding. There's sea flooding, river flooding, groundwater flooding, which is when the water table under the ground goes up, and there's surface water flooding. And we're starting to see groundwater flooding, which means the water table is saturated. It's got nowhere to go. So it's going to take a while for this to start going down again.
Because we've had all these different storms over the last few weeks. How many have we had
We've
now?
had 8 named storms from the UK Met Office, so we name our storms, but there's been a couple extra that have crept in that have been named by other places around Europe. So we've had about 10 storms, and that's really been driven by the jet stream, which has plonked itself right over us and has been pulling them in from the Atlantic really non-stop. I mean, we've had Storm Henk last week, which crept on us really, really quickly. I mean, he was pretty small but pretty dynamic and whipped across the country and caused a lot of damage, possibly more than Storm Gerrit, which was the one before that we had a bit more warning about, and the ones prior to that. So hopefully the storms have gone away for a little bit, and now it's time to wrap up for the cold.
I'm slightly worried about the ice, though, in the sense that it stops the floodwater a little bit if it ices over, but when it does eventually warm through again, excuse me, and that ice melts, then we've got the problem all over again if the groundwater's still a problem.
Yes, absolutely. And not just that, if we do get snow, now there's no snow in the forecast at the moment because we've got high pressure, which is for cold, dry conditions. But if we get a very, very cold snap and then we get another low that comes in and bumps against that, we're going to get snow. We saw a bit of that before Christmas. And if you get accumulating snow during a cold snap, after you've had flooding just now and then you get a big thaw, then you've got flooding again. So those people that are battling with the floods at the moment, it's a miserable time for them. And yeah.
Could you please come in one day with some nice news, Nathan?
Can you wait till July?
Yeah, well, we
It'll
might
be too
have
hot
to.
by then.
Yeah, exactly. Then we'll be talking about heat wave.
It'll never be too hot.
Well, you might not be here, Stephen, because you'll be spending your lottery win.
Okay, yeah.
It's £2.60.
Hey, don't knock it. Don't knock it, Nathan. Thanks very much.
Thank you very much.
A rough day for the Prime Minister today because he's facing yet another by-election after MP Chris Skidmore announced he will resign as soon as possible.
Yeah, the former Energy Minister plans to step down when Parliament returns next week because of new legislation for oil and gas drilling, which he says is wrong and will cause future harm.
The government says the planned expansion of new fossil fuels in the North Sea is vital to achieve energy security plans.
I have to say, I can't help but feel a little bit annoyed about this.
Go on.
Only in the sense that we're in a cost of living crisis and by-elections cost money. They cost us money to hold. And there's going to be a general election this year possibly in 3 or 4 months, possibly in 10 months.
Well,
Why can't he just wait?
Well, maybe what turned Chris Skidmore is when he heard the election was likely to be in the second half of the year rather than in the first half of the year, and he thought, well, I can't wait that long, because he was due to go anyway.
It's stepping down anyway. So why can't he just wait? I don't know. Maybe you live in his constituency and you'd like to be able to have your say.
Maybe he's watching.
So let us know, gbviews@gbnews.com. There is some positive news for millions of us across the UK because the government's reduction of national insurance takes effect from today.
But just how positive is it really? Announced in the Chancellor's autumn statement, the pre-election cut to national insurance from 12% to 10%, on the face of it, will impact around 27 million payroll employees across the UK.
Well, this is what the Chancellor had to say.
Today is a very significant day because having turned the corner on inflation, brought it right down, the economy is doing much better, and that means we can start to bring down taxes. Today's cut in national insurance by 2% means that a typical family with 2 earners will be nearly £1,000 better off this year. That is really important in a cost of living crisis where people have been feeling real pressure on family budgets. But also it rewards work. It'll bring more people into the labour force, and that is good for growing the economy.
Jeremy Hunt speaking there, but some critics have questioned whether the timing of the tax cuts with an election on the horizon is just a bid to woo voters.
Well, our reporter Will Hollis looks at how this all might affect us.
Down to the nuts and bolts. At Alan Kent's Motors, a garage in Ilkeston, Derbyshire, the diary is full. Today's date stands out in any worker's calendar. The government's lowering national insurance, less tax on your earnings. Lewis, a mechanic, welcomes the new direction.
Well, I've got 2 young kids as well, so it will go towards obviously feeding them, clothing them, so straight away that'll help with that.
Alan Kent Motors.
He's not alone. Chloe, who manages the garage, is looking forward to the extra cash.
With national insurance changing, it will make us financially stable now. Obviously, we can have more luxuries in life rather than having to worry about all the bills coming out.
Most workers pay national insurance. It's one of the biggest taxes deducted from your pay automatically by your boss. It's dropping from 12 to 10% of earnings, benefiting 27 million people.
For the average earner on a salary of around £35,000, the saving on national insurance is about £450 in a year, £37 in a month.
We take decisions for the long term.
The Chancellor, Jeremy Hunt, announced the cut as part of the autumn statement. The timing of the tax cut hasn't gone unnoticed. A general election only months away.
They want the votes again, don't they?
It's good for the country as a whole.
They should have done it a long time ago.
But the savings might not be all they seem.
Yes, some tax cuts today, but in a bigger picture where taxes are going up.
Taxation is at the highest level since the end of the Second World War. Helen is Deputy Director at the Institute for Fiscal Studies.
Roughly those people earning over about £30,000, then this year alone there will be overall tax cuts, but it's part of a much broader trend where the government is freezing thresholds in the personal tax system, which is a really chunky tax increase. By 27-28, then the average earner on £35,000 will be paying about £450 more in tax.
Back at the garage, this motor's almost ready for the road. Fixing cars, fixing the country. Neither job can be rushed. Will Hollis, GB News in Ilkeston.
You see, even for those people on, what to say, average of 35,000 and it's £450, was it £450 a year? I think it was. It's not a lot of money. It's not a huge...
In the grand scheme of things, not when you look at how much everything costs now.
£37 a month or whatever it is, it's not going to make a huge difference. Look, it's better than nothing. It's better than a kick in the teeth, but it's not going to be life-changing, is it?
But also, when I said earlier, you know, how positive is it? Because income tax thresholds are frozen.
Mm.
So you've got people dragged into the higher tax brackets. So overall, I'm not exactly sure how better off people are going to be and actually whether it's going to ease the pressure on people.
Yeah, but nothing's going to change that, is it? That's the problem, because the Labour Party, Keir Starmer said only yesterday or the day before, no tax cuts if there's a Labour government for about 2 years. So nothing's going to change under Labour.
Jeremy Hunt's saying he doesn't know if he can do more tax cuts after this national insurance.
But we have got a spring budget. We have got a spring budget in April.
March.
Is it March?
I think it's March, yeah.
Oh, yeah, March the 6th.
Because it was the announcement of that that made people think, oh, there's going to be an election in May.
There will be an election in May.
Are you convinced? See, the Prime Minister had... It was a very careful choice of words. It's the working assumption.
Well, you
read what you like into that.
You can't have a working... It's his decision. There isn't a working assumption. I think he's trying to put Labour on the back foot and make them think, oh, we've got another 6-7 months to play with before we need to start publishing a manifesto. So I think... I could be proved very, very wrong, but I think May the...
if you're right... I'll pay you another £2.60 to add to your lottery winnings.
I want more than that. Love me neck. But anyway, we shall see. But I wouldn't bet your bottom dollar that we're not going to have one before summer. But we shall see. It is 16 minutes past 6. Let's just remind you of the top stories today.
In the United States, new court documents released have revealed claims that Prince Andrew had daily massages when he visited Jeffrey Epstein in Florida. In a transcript from evidence in 2009, Epstein's former housekeeper said the Duke of York was one of the celebrities who spent weeks at Epstein's Palm Beach home. It's the third round of documents to be unsealed, detailing those who had connections to the late sex offender Jeffrey Epstein. He strongly denies Prince Andrew any wrongdoing.
The ITV drama Mr Bates versus the Post Office has led to the Metropolitan Police to begin looking at potential fraud offences committed in the Horizon IT scandal. More than 700 Post Office branch managers were accused of wrongdoing, some sent to prison, after faulty accounting software made it appear money was missing. It comes as 50 new potential victims of the scandal have contacted lawyers following the drama.
And in America, President Biden has launched a new attack on his predecessor, Donald Trump, on the third anniversary of the January the 6th attacks on the Capitol building. It comes as the US Supreme Court has agreed to hear Donald Trump's appeal over Colorado's decision to disqualify him from its presidential primary elections.
OK, time to get a check on that forecast for you today then. Here's Alex.
Good morning, I'm Alex Burkill here with your latest GB News weather forecast. Whilst it is going to turn much drier than of late through the weekend, it is also much colder too. As a result, some of us have woken up to a touch of frost and there are some patches of fog to watch out for. Through the day, eastern parts will be often quite cloudy, a few outbreaks of rain here, though notice in East Anglia we could see some brightness developing in the afternoon. Sunnier skies further west, a few coastal showers to watch out for. Across the far northeast of Scotland, it could be quite blustery with some showery rain for Orkney and Shetland. Temperatures will be a little bit below average for the time of year, so despite some winter sunshine, it's going to feel quite chilly. As we go through the evening and overnight, the cloud in the east is going to push a little bit further westward, so more central parts turning a bit cloudier for a time, but even so, the cloud's likely to break up at times, so there will be some clear spells around, and further west and northwest, particularly across Scotland and Northern Ireland, quite a lot of clear skies here. So again, it is going to turn quite chilly. There will be some frost around, as well as some fog or freezing fog patches for some. Some of that freezing fog then could linger well through the morning, perhaps even into the afternoon for some places, especially across central southern Scotland and for Northern Ireland too. Otherwise, across England and Wales, it's looking like a largely dry day. You couldn't rule out a few showers, mostly towards the coast, but a good deal of sunshine around. Despite the sunshine though, again, it is going to feel quite chilly. In fact, temperatures might be a little bit lower tomorrow compared to today, so a real chilly feel to things. Bye-bye.
Still to come here on Breakfast on GB News. Good morning. Tottenham played in the FA Cup last night, but did they manage to progress? Aidan McGee will tell us more next. This is Breakfast on GB News.
Good afternoon, Britain.
Good afternoon, Britain. Join us, Tom and Emily,
To find out what's happening in the heart of Westminster.
and why it matters to you.
Weekdays from midday, we bring you the most compelling stories from across the United Kingdom.
And from your doorstep to our inbox.
That's right, we want to hear from you.
GB News,
Britain's news channel.
In the GB Newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens. With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK, we're ready to give you accurate reporting every day. When the news breaks, we'll be there with bulletins on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Tired of the usual focus-tested, pre-prepared Westminster runaround? Well, so am I.
So you want higher taxes?
Is your department to blame for this? Are you rethinking this policy? Every Sunday at 9:30, I'll be sitting down with those in power to get the truth about the issues affecting you.
Let's be honest, we've known about the cost pressures of this project for years, not months.
That's the Camilla Tominey Show, a politics show with personality. On GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I think the most exciting bit for me is talking to people.
People who I think are ignored often by the major news channels. We're going to give news they want to hear. There's a voice there that needs to be heard. I think there's a chance here for a diversity of opinion to be expressed, which you don't find elsewhere. It's really exciting.
We don't hold back. We're free to say how decisions that are taken here
affects us all around the country. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Time for the sport this morning. Aidan McGee is here. Good morning, sir.
Good morning to you both.
Happy New Year to you.
Happy New Year to you, indeed.
Now, Tottenham versus Burnley last night. We've got to talk that. We've got to talk FA Cup. Partly because you were there last night, were you?
I was
Didn't
indeed.
watch any of the football.
Oh, that's nonsense. That's absolute nonsense. That's a scandalous accusation. No, there's my programme. There, yeah, I was at the Spurs. Yeah, exactly. Well, the menu
You were
was
there
fantastic.
for the hospitality.
Well, listen, the hospitality was a bit special. I was in a lounge called the Loge. And
The what?
The
The
Loge.
Loge?
The Loge. Yeah, it was.
It was
yeah.
just the lounge, but they forgot to put the N in.
And the U.
Oh yeah, that's yeah. Where are you going with this?
No, I was just wondering if it was a typo.
No, I don't think so. There's lots of different lounges there, and I was invited in because obviously my friend wanted my company. You know, my knowledge of the game, and I chose the sirloin of beef. You'll be pleased to know, yeah. But there was also the what else was on the menu? Chicken liver pate, the banana and chocolate chip dessert.
Did you have that?
No, I didn't. I couldn't fit it in.
You're such a good cook. I bet you're a right food critic when you go
I was
out.
a little. I was going through it a little bit. I thought, you know, because they serve it on a platter, so some bits, you know, you can, I've got a bit of a critical eye, as you know.
I do know.
I picked a few holes in it, but I didn't want to pick too many because I've been invited, and I know it's quite costly. So, but the game was excellent. It was it was poor. The game was poor, but
make your mind up.
Yeah, no, it's poor. I did watch some of it. No, the game was poor, but the goal was fantastic, and Tottenham are through. That's all they're going to care about. And you have to wonder as well how much the smaller clubs like Burnley actually take this seriously, because I don't think it's in their interest to be in this competition for that long. They've got an almighty scrap at the bottom of the Premier League to contend with.
That's their priority.
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, look, you have to look at it. If you just look at the prize money, this is why the FA Cup has kind of diminished somewhat over the last 20 years. Not all about United not taking their place in it back in 2000. It's the fact that the prize money for winning the FA Cup is around about £4 million. Now, you get 100 million, over £100 million for finishing bottom of the Premier League. So you're better off just staying in. The Premier League has become existential. It's more important to just be part of it and in it than actually do anything. And that means that while most supporters would take winning an FA Cup over finishing 15th, financially, you'd be very daft to relinquish your place in the Premier League at the expense of winning the FA Cup.
I'll tell you what, they don't miss a trick, do they? Look, I've been flicking through the programme. There's a picture. You won't be able to see it. It's very small at the bottom, but a picture with Luke Littler.
Yeah, I know, yeah. Well, Ali Pali's local to Tottenham, really. But he was there last week. He went to the game, didn't he?
Yeah, well, there you go. But I just think that's quite... They're very up to date in this programme.
They are indeed, yeah. They don't muck around. But it was an enjoyable evening. And I got home late, but I was in work this morning.
What was the score?
1-0 Spurs.
Oh, well, Paul Coyte will be happy.
Yeah, he will.
Let's talk about today, though, because there is a great derby. The first Tyne Weir derby since that 1-1 Premier League draw at St James's Park.
2016.
Gosh.
Yeah, well, I think that
years
was
ago.
Yeah, that was the Sunderland stayed up that year. Newcastle went down, and then the following year Sunderland went down. Newcastle came back up, and Sunderland went all the way down to the third tier. It's been a long way back. They have shown signs of improvement.
I've been to these derby games.
They're brilliant,
and they are something else.
I know, they're fantastic. Well, there was a controversy yesterday as well about the
bar.
No, I thought it was hilarious, didn't you?
The black cat.
No, it wasn't the black cat. They took it's a discrepancy.
Black cat bar, wasn't it?
The black, yeah, that's what it. So Sunderland are called the Black Cats. Their area in the ground would be called the Black Cat Bar, and they changed it into Newcastle colours and livery because it was Newcastle fans who'd booked it out, just to make them feel a bit welcome. It's the last thing you want to do in a FA Cup. And the chairman said he was absolutely appalled by what they'd done. But I mean, I just think to myself, well, if the staff think they can get away with that with the boss, then the buck has to stop with the boss. But the Sunderland fans weren't pleased about it at all. But yeah, 12:45. That's one thing the FA Cup does. It pits two sides together that haven't met in a long time, and you do get that opportunity. But it's going to be a brilliant game.
Do you have a prediction?
I think Sunderland might do it because Newcastle got no form. They've got a lot of injuries. I'm not convinced they need to be in this competition right now either, just because they need to get players back and they want to try and get into the Champions League later in the season. However, if Eddie Howe loses and they lose to Sunderland in a division below and they're not having a great time of it, I think he might be under pressure. I really do. I really do.
Let's talk AJ. He's got a fight coming up. Not Deontay Wilder, though, that people are sort of hoping for.
Well, Deontay Wilder lost on that card on 23rd of December in Saudi.
That threw all the plans out the window.
It did, but having said that, look, it's been announced last night by Eddie Hearn that he's going to fight Francis Ngannou. Now, this is how chaotic and what a horrible year boxing has had. Francis Ngannou made his boxing debut in October. I think he beat Fury on the night, to be honest with you. He was never going to be allowed to stand as a victory, of course, but this is going to be his second fight of his career against AJ. He's already ranked number 10 in the world. He's not even a proper boxer. He's a UFC fighter who's come into boxing. And so I think it's an interesting fight.
Sorry, what's
UFC, it's kind of mixed
UFC.
Yeah, it's kind of a mixed martial art thing. It's slightly different. It involves your feet as well, I think. So, but there's some quite competent fighters as well. But he's 10th in the world, and he's never. And look, I'm not saying he can't fight. He'd do me in, that's for sure. But I think that that says everything you need to know about boxing. Someone can come in from left field from a different sport, effectively, and become 10 in the world. So it's an interesting fight.
Is that why it all needs to be reinvented? Why there's not been as much pushback against these celebrity fights as I would have expected.
There's a vacuum. There's a vacuum, Stephen. When we're not seeing the fights we really want to see, Pip, and we're waiting for a year or even 3 years to see... I mean, how long have we been talking about Tyson Fury fighting AJ? 5 years, I would say. We're not seeing the fights because of the politics, because of the broadcasters, because of the promoters. And so there's a vacuum. Yeah, of course it's money. Exactly. And so when you see... The public want to see something. And then you've got also this thing about they want to wait until the Saudi season because that's where they get paid the big dough.
Yeah.
And so you've got to see something. And so if something captures the fans' imagination every now and again, then don't be surprised when it gets big numbers. And it should be a shot across the bows for boxing, but it's been very, very slow to wake up.
Yeah. OK, bad news about Nadal.
Yeah, hip injury. It's going to be his last year on the tour. He already said that the Australian Open is 9 days away, and he suffered... I mean, he went 3.5 hours last night in a 3-set match against Jordan... what's the problem?
Jordan got a hip injury.
Jordan Thompson. That's him, yeah. So Jordan... Well, no, no, the point is he's unknown. He's not that well fancied, and he took... Nadal doesn't need 3.5 hours in preparation for the Australian Open. And... It's the hip injury. They think he thinks it might be a muscle injury, which would be good because he had an operation in June, and that was a bone complaint. And so he thinks it might just be a twinge, but he needed a medical timeout. And it doesn't look good, as I say. He's 37 years old. He's not played for a year, and it's a big ask for him to come back and expect him to do something in the slams.
Is that quite an age to be playing tennis?
Roger
Djokovic.
Djokovic is a year younger than Nadal. He's the same age as Andy Murray, but don't forget Federer retired at 41.
Yeah.
So not anymore with the sports science. You're seeing sports stars going on for longer and longer. I mean, the other thing is there's nobody really coming apart from Alcaraz. There's not really many coming through. We've been waiting for the new group of tennis players to come through in the men's side probably for the last 15 years. And it's only recently that we've seen guys who are capable of winning slams.
Yeah. But we need some fresh blood in the sport.
In British terms, certainly we do, yeah. Well, just generally.
Mate, Emma Raducanu.
Well, she
had a victory the other day, didn't she?
She did, yeah. So she is... I mean, it's 2.5 years now since she won the US Open. Yeah, I mean, I think back to Pete Sampras winning the US Open in 1990. It took him 3 years to win his second slam. There were coaching issues, there were stylistic issues with his play. I think there's an element of that with Emma Raducanu. She's suffered injury as well with wrist. She's had wrist surgery, but she's also, I think, had about 7 coaches in 2.5 years.
Yeah.
And that can't be good.
Consistency.
You do, yeah, you do. You're travelling around the world. The first one wasn't her fault that he couldn't commit. It was a coach that she'd had from before she really turned professional, and he couldn't commit to the schedule. So that wasn't her fault. But 6 after that, you think one of them would be suitable, wouldn't you?
You would think so.
Yeah.
Anyway, fingers crossed for her. Aidan, thank you. We shall see you a little bit later
Absolutely.
on. It is 6:30. This is Breakfast on GB News. Let's just remind you of the top stories this morning.
After a week of wild weather battering Britain, Labour has accused the Prime Minister of being asleep at the wheel as thousands of Britons face flood damage.
Well, more bad news for the PM with another by-election on the way as former Energy Minister Chris Skidmore resigns as an MP.
And a New Year's gift from Jeremy Hunt. Cuts to national insurance come into force today in a bid to boost the Tories' electoral chances.
Now we've turned a corner, brought down inflation, the economy's doing better, we want to bring down the tax burden, and this 2% cut will make a very big difference to many families up and down the country.
Well, still to come for you, have cities across the UK been overtaken by rats? That's a nice thought. We'll be looking at that in Headline Makers in a couple of minutes.
Big news, big debates, big opinion. Patrick Christie's Tonight is the week's biggest show. Every weekday, 9 to 11 p.m, we've got the inside track on the day's top stories. There'll be sharp takes you won't get anywhere else. We will set the news agenda, not just follow it, and I want to bring you along for the ride. Whatever it is, we'll have our finger on the pulse. It's news, but it's this close to entertainment. Patrick Christie's Tonight, 9 to 11 p.m, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Wake up to the headlines with Headliners every morning at 5 a.m. We treat you to the day's biggest stories before anyone else, 7 days a week. You can catch up on everything you need to know before you've even had your kippers. Headliners every morning at 5 a.m, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Michelle Dewberry, and I'm not here to tell you what to think. I'd much rather hear what you have to say. So, send in your opinions to gbviews@gbnews.com. Keep them clean, and you never know, I might read them out. With my panel here on Jubes & Co, we debate, we get stuck into the issues of the day on a show where all views are welcome, especially yours. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
When the news happens, it happens here.
And really important breaking news.
Breaking news this morning.
On TV, radio and online, the news starts here on Britain's Newsroom.
All the biggest stories and the answers that you need from across the UK and beyond.
Join Britain's Newsroom from 9:30 on GB News.
The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Now then, Lee Anderson here. Join me on GB News on my show, The Real World, every Friday at 7 p.m.
I'm not eating bloody cat. Are you
Delicious.
mental?
Open your mouth. OK, here comes a train.
Reminds me of the scene in Singing in the Rain.
Adam, is that a good one?
Whoa! Join me at 7 on GB News, Britain's news channel.
.33 morning to you. Let's have a look at some of the front pages and other stories making headlines today. And we've got fabulous showbiz reporter Stephanie Tetchy. And we have the one and only Susan Holder. Which is it's good to see. I was very annoyed that when you brought Noddy in the other week, I wasn't in.
Well,
But I was.
That.
You
yes.
were.
Oh, you missed a
We had a
treat.
great
I
time.
know.
The only thing is, you would have been the odd one out because it was like a
Yeah,
Midlands
it was a
posse.
Midlands massive.
Oh.
Yeah, we were all Midlands. Yeah.
Yeah.
We had to have subtitles at one point.
Well, yeah, I can imagine.
There was a lot of bab going on in the conversation.
You're right, Bub.
I've never used that. See, I grew up with a mum who was Welsh, correcting my Midlands pronunciation.
Oh, really?
So, which helped me then when I moved into news and had to kind of in other areas, and you're not meant to have too strong an accent in those days anyway.
Yeah.
But then I went and moved in with Noddy Holder, which kind of, all that does is accentuate your Midlands.
Well, it would do. It would
Midlands
do.
accent.
Does he always say to you, "Turn a bit"?
No, he doesn't. No, not really. No, he's not quite as kind of caricature as people would
People would like to imagine.
You know he's watching and you know you're in trouble. So be very, very careful. Morning,
Just
Nod.
trying not to dig myself a hole, but I always do. So.
Anyway, let's whiz, before we have a proper chat, let's have a whiz through the front pages for you. The Mail has pressure on the Metropolitan Police to quiz Prince Andrew over new court papers, claiming he had knowledge of the Jeffrey Epstein sex trafficking ring.
The I newspaper leads with rats infesting towns across the UK after bin collections were delayed by up to 3 weeks.
Top Green Tory quits over net zero row. That's Chris Skidmore. It's on the front page of The Telegraph.
And The Mirror focuses on TV presenter Kate Garraway's tribute to the awful passing of her husband Derek Draper, who's died after a long battle with COVID.
The Post Office under criminal investigation over the wrongful prosecution of hundreds of sub-postmasters. That's on the front of The Times. So let's go through some of those with Stephanie and Susan. Stephanie, let's start with Kate Garraway, should we?
It
Done
was
a lot of the papers this morning.
As to be expected. I feel like the public has been on this journey with Kate Garraway because she's been so open about her battle with Derek as he suffered from long COVID over the past 4 years. And, you know, she made 2 documentaries and wrote a book where we really got that insight to how it really is to live with someone who had long COVID. And I think everyone, like Kate, kind of had this optimistic disposition that he was going to be okay. And sadly, that this wasn't the case, as she put on social media yesterday, that he died earlier this week on Wednesday. She said that she was holding his hand during those long last hours, and I can't imagine the heartbreak she must be feeling. And it goes to show that long COVID is still about and it's still wrecking people's lives. I think people think, oh, the pandemic's over, but I've met a lot of people who are still suffering from long COVID, and it's just really heartbreaking. But as you can imagine, for Derek Draper, he's had lots of tributes come from both the political world, from people such as Sir Tony Blair, and also the entertainment world with Elton John. So my heart really does go out to Kate Garraway and her 2 children. It's a sad way to start the year, and she's just shown so much bravery and integrity throughout this.
She was so transparent about what Derek was going through, what the family was enduring. And I worked with Kate. She's a former colleague of mine. I worked with her for a number of years, and she was so strong, so resilient, and she would... We all know how gruelling these early morning shifts can be, but she would turn up at 3 o'clock in the morning to work.
It's unbelievable, isn't it?
And she'd been caring
to
for
work
Derek.
at all.
I don't think she'd had any sleep, and she would, you know, put her face on and she would do the job.
To go to work at all when you're going through something like that, I think it's, you know, she has to be completely commended. But to sit on television and, you know, there's no amount of makeup that can help you.
No.
You know, when you're feeling like that, I don't know how she managed to kind of put that face on and go on and be coherent in any way. But the light that she has shone on the plight of carers, I think, is going to be her legacy and possibly Derek's as well by default, because she really has had to go through it. And some of the things that I remember her talking about, and like you say, the documentary, which won, you know, she's won national television awards and things for that, quite rightly. But some of the things she had to go through, even though it was so public, even though everyone could see what was going on, like a lot of things we know that go on in the world, she still had to fight for every single thing that was necessary, for the support that she needed. She was in financial difficulty because of things that were going on, because of having to close down his business. All those things that people don't think about. And it's just the worst way to lose your partner, to see the decline that he's had to go through.
And we can see that picture there. That's when they got back, when Kate got back from doing I'm a Celebrity. Now, that was December 2019.
Scary.
Derek suffered COVID March 2020, so just several months before. And you could see they were on top of the world in that picture.
COVID had left his body very early on. By the time he'd come out of the coma, it was the damage that had been done. And I think I've read today that he's only one of 5 people in the world who have suffered as badly. It is just terrible. And it's a testament to her and the care he's received that he got this far, really. He was only 56.
57, that's the thing. It's no age at all.
And, of course, his children as well, 17 and 14.
Let's have a look at the eye, should we, Susan? This one, which fills us all with horror. Rats
Yes.
are infesting UK towns and cities. Hopefully not anywhere near Holder Towers.
Well, I mean, they can get everywhere, can't they? But I mean, there's some of the places that are mentioned are Nottingham, Merseyside, Glasgow, and Wiltshire specifically. And the particular problem is down to the fact that bins are not being collected routinely or on time. And people in certain places, particularly Nottingham, have had to play that very un-Christmassy game of bin roulette, which is where you put your bin out and you don't know whether they're coming, and then they don't come, and then you have to try and guess which day they are coming, and what a nightmare that is.
Because do you have all the different coloured bins? And I always have to look at what the neighbours are doing because I never remember.
I know, but do you have one neighbour who just puts a random bin out and then we all follow and then it's short? I'm sure
It's usually
people do
me who does
that on purpose.
I have some
people do
neighbours
that
who
on
put all the bins out every
all the
week.
time, just in hope.
And it's just like, because it's not Blue Week.
No.
It's not a Blue Week. I feel like banging on the door.
I mean, you're lucky if you've got room for your bins as well. I mean, I just think we've got so many bins now and so many houses, particularly in cities. Where are you meant to keep all those bins? And they're all kept like under your front window, which if they're not collected regularly, or if when we get hot weather, that's not hygienic, is it? I mean, again, it is just a complete shock to me. And the reason they're saying is, cash-strapped councils.
So it's not because of Christmas and New Year?
Well, some of it is Christmas and New Year, and then of course some of it is bad weather, and some of it is staff shortages. But whatever the reasons are, please, could we not just collect the bins? I mean, it's minimum kind of effort, isn't it, or minimum requirement of what we need in a civilised society is the rubbish to be taken away. You don't have that when you go somewhere like I'm on holiday in Portugal. I always think it's so amazing. They collect rubbish every day there because it's a hot country and they will not allow it to kind of. They can do it there. Why can't we do it here?
But do we want a system like in Spain, where you have to take your rubbish yourself to little collection points?
But if you have
that would drive me mad.
If you have very local collection points, like I mean, again, they do that in Europe quite a lot. Recycling points at the end of lots of different streets. That's not a bad system if people can be bothered to take. It would reduce a certain amount. We should have more of those big kind of areas where we can take things. But yeah, so the story here is about councils not collecting and all these problems. Somebody here said they had to store bags of rubbish stuffed with nappies, tissues and cat litter in their kitchen because if you leave it out, foxes get it or it attracts the rats. And this is why the rat population...
Let us know if you're watching or listening this morning. Let us know if you've got rats where you live.
I was
problem with your collection.
about the paper the other day because we had one of these aristocrats who sent us a picture of he was about to throw something in the bin in Kensington and he opened it and there was a big rat that was waiting there. And
in the bin?
In the bin. I don't know, but clearly because we're not getting rid of our rubbish. And I
read a piece yesterday by Caitlin Moran, and she said she's had rats and they couldn't work out how they were getting into her house, and she'd just kind of left a door open and a loaf of bread on the side, and rats. Anyway, she put cameras in her house and found they were coming in through the chimney, and they were just having a party at night in her house. And I mean, just dreadful.
It's not a nice thought.
We're probably putting people off their breakfast.
Yes, yeah, don't think about it. Don't think about it. Stephanie, let's have a look at the Mail and this... I mean, pressure on Scotland Yard, it claims, to talk to Prince Andrew about all this latest stuff that's come out.
It hasn't been a good start for the year for Prince Andrew because there is a mounting pressure on Scotland Yard to investigate any new sexual assault claims against Prince Andrew. Obviously, we've had these new court documents that have come out this week, and there's more claims of damaging sexual abuse, not indirectly to Prince Andrew.
And this is where I wonder if it all gets a bit... I mean, look, I have to say I'm not a fan.
Yeah.
However, the latest claims that have come out overnight saying, oh, well, he used to have a daily massage.
Yeah.
Well, there may be implications from that. But if it is just, well, he had a massage every day, well, so what?
I guess there has to be a balance of if there is kind of credible accusations that are coming out. I think people want to know that they will be investigated and not just be thrown to the side. I think I sometimes do wish that Prince Andrew did have his day in court with Virginia Giuffre because he felt by paying her off, that would be the end of it. And clearly, this case is not going to go to bed anytime soon. He is a part of the royal family. So it's not someone that we can just easily dismiss. And, you know, I've seen it time and time again with these kind of Me Too cases, these sexual assault cases. Once you light a match, there's going to be more stories that are going to come out. It's not just going to go to bed. And we can't, at the same time, if young girls have been sexually abused, by a royal, why are we dismissing that?
We must say Prince Andrew has always denied any wrongdoing. We should make that clear. But there were names, there was other names that have come up, aren't there, in these latest tranche of documents. But there's no implication as such of wrongdoing. So Bill Clinton.
Yeah. Well, yeah.
He says as soon as he knew what Epstein was about, he completely cut off their friendship, and he only thought he was doing good philanthropic work.
Well, this is the problem with the kind of the way media can report this, which everyone goes looking over there and they forget to look in the most important place. So they're all looking at the names that they've heard of.
Yeah.
And what we should be thinking about are the people who were responsible for the sex trafficking, and not the men who were gullible and stupid enough to kind of be involved in the sexual activity, maybe, that they were in. Because at the end of the day, that's the hardest thing to kind of prove. It's a he said, she said situation. I do think Andrew has not covered himself in glory in any way. And certainly, I mean, you say about he should have had his day in court. He thought the interview that he did was going to help him. And of course, it only made it worse because it just didn't look like he'd taken it seriously or taken the responsibility for something and put his side of the case in any way that made us think, OK, well, that's a reasonable point of view. He wasn't reasonable in that way. So I think he should... And the way that the royal family have handled it by taking all the things that they can take away from him, apart from obviously Royal Lodge, which they're trying to do, and I think the only reason he's still in Royal Lodge is because Sarah Ferguson has been going through breast cancer, and I think that Charles didn't want to kind of like hammer that point while she was going through that. But I think he will. I think he will be moved out of there. I think we won't see him doing any kind of public.
No. Well, I mean, heck.
But he is still a member of the family, and they will still look after him, and that's fair enough.
That's fair enough. But can you? I mean, I know he wants to get back on the royal roller coaster, as it were.
Well, he shouldn't want to do that.
He shouldn't want to do that, but can you imagine...
He shouldn't want the trappings. He should want to do the work, which is what he should always have done. He should want to do charity work. He should want to use the experience.
But even with that, can you imagine the reception he would get anywhere?
I don't know what charity would want to do, but there's always a way. He's got 2 daughters out there who do quite a lot of work.
How did you find it when you saw him at Sandringham at Christmas and he was sort of talking to well-wishers? Do you think that was appropriate?
It gives me the ick. I just think, you know, it's hard. There's not been enough time to kind of distance Prince Andrew and Jeffrey Epstein and this big scandal, and I just don't think he can sweep it underneath the carpet and act like nothing's happened. I do think he should fade away a little bit.
Walking on Christmas morning with your family, it's one thing, but I don't understand why, as a public figure, with all the experience he's had and all the people, the examples he's got around him of Charles and Anne and people who do amazing work for the royal family. I'm very much a royalist, and so I can't understand why he doesn't get that this isn't the way to behave.
But do you know what? You only have to look at the interview, don't you? And then to know that afterwards he was taking Emily Maitlis round going and thinking he'd done a really good job.
Done a good job, amazing.
But maybe this is the actions of an innocent man. You know, if someone is innocent, they feel like, then why should I have to hide? Why should my life be destroyed by this? And maybe that's why he's persistent, that he wants to get back into royal life. He's got nothing to hide, so... We do need to give him that room of, you know, maybe this is why he still wants to be there. I do feel sorry for the celebrities who have been named this week, because it's very much one of those things, guilty by association. You know? And we don't really know the true story of what's happened in their real relationships with Jeffrey Epstein.
And I think that is the key thing about...
He was a tarantula, wasn't he? I mean, his tentacles stretched. I mean, Stephen Hawking was named. The documents he visited his island.
Well, some very salacious comments about Stephen Hawking.
Rich and famous.
Well, yes. It's not one I would want, I tell you.
Gosh,
like that, can you imagine? Let's have a look at The Independent, Susan, and thrill seekers who didn't get the experience they wanted.
This is a clip that is being shown on the internet of some poor people who were on a roller coaster on Australia's Gold Coast, which came to a halt at a rather horrifying angle. Apparently, it was caused by a trailing scarf. So actually, somebody's scarf got caught in the mechanism, and that's what caused this particular problem. I do remember there was a case a few years ago of some poor lady whose scarf got caught, and she died as a result of. I mean, you have got to be so careful on those things. Are you a roller coaster?
No,
I am. I have to admit.
Do you like them?
I absolutely love anything like that. I'm a total daredevil, but I would not relish
I took my son to Disneyland when he was 17, and there's a really, really, really enormous one in Florida. I remember we just both sort of looked at it, and I went, do you want to go on there? And he went, do you want to go on there? And we both went, no, we don't really want to go on there. So we avoided that one. But we did go on a few of the little ones. And I remember going on one and seeing a flip-flop kind of it down in the mechanism and thinking, oh, somebody must have gone on in flip-flops and lost one in the... I don't really see the major attraction.
That would be my idea of how roller coasters, like, I try to be quite adventurous on them, but I just think when I'm on them, there's always that fear in my head that this is going to go wrong. And then when I see clips like that, I'm like, this is why I don't go.
I'll tell you what, because they had another incident at that thing in Hyde Park, didn't they want to call it Winter Wonderland?
Yeah.
Because they have these... I don't know if it was this that went wrong, but they have these great big ball things on almost like elastic bands, and they stretch it and then just let you go.
No.
Oh, I've done that. I did that.
I mean,
you actually got to work this morning.
Yeah, I did it when I was working in regional television. I did it during a live broadcast.
I mean, I wouldn't do it for all the tea in China.
Into the air, and actually, you could still hear me. My mic was still, but all you could hear was me
screaming.
Yeah,
I have
but it was
jumped out of
great
a plane, but I was strapped to somebody who knew what they were doing, and I did a tandem skydive.
I did that.
And I mean, and that is a kind of,
it's amazing.
Yeah, I loved it. I mean, I did it once for charity. It's not something I do every weekend because I thought, well, I've done it once.
Yeah.
I get married, done it once, it worked. Let's leave it there. But the whole roller coaster thing. I remember my husband said when he was very young, he saw one of those travelling fair things, and those kind of swings that spin around and go horizontal. Yeah. He saw one where one came off and the people flew.
No.
This was many years ago. And he said he would never go on anything mechanical. He just doesn't trust it at all. I think once you've ever seen anything, if you were in that park and you saw that, would you ever get on a roller coaster again?
No.
I don't think you would.
No.
It's just some things are just not worth the risk.
No.
I think it gets worse the older you get. You're just like, youngsters are quite daredevil when it comes to these things, but I can't do it.
No, I couldn't do it.
I love my life too much.
Let's stick with, and you'll both have a view on this, I'm sure, this Hollywood auction. Because Marilyn Monroe, Hugh Hefner, stuff of theirs being sold. I can imagine you, Stephanie, wanting to buy some Marilyn stuff.
I definitely do want to invest in Marilyn stuff. I actually attended the 50th anniversary of her death. They done like a memorial service for her in LA, and it was so fabulous. I love Marilyn, and I think it's so good to collect things like.
Well, you might be lucky because there's a lipstick on because I mean I'm not saying I don't know what your budget is, Steph, but the dress there's a couple of dresses that are expected to raise at least 80,000.
There's the lipstick.
There's the lipstick.
Used.
I would presume so. That's Hugh Hefner's one of his smoking jackets, and that dress there is expected to fetch 79,000 to 160,000 pounds. Is that all?
I thought it would be
Should we all chip
in?
Yeah. We could wear it on rotation. but the lipstick might be something that you could kind of. But it would be. I'm an Elvis fan, and when you see Elvis auction items, I'm always very tempted. I kind of leave the details later. Now, for Christmas, I would like, but no, my husband never kind of takes me up on that, unfortunately.
No.
I never get something that Elvis wants.
No. I think that lipstick might be quite expensive. Because if she's used it, then there's potentially sort of Marilyn DNA on it.
Would it still be all there? I mean, would it not have disintegrated a bit?
Well, it looks like it.
But apparently it's Elizabeth Arden, and we could probably look it up. Yeah, it's an Elizabeth Arden lipstick. I'm just trying to. So I'm just thinking. So we could in a gold tone case.
Yeah, the case does look quite delicate.
But you can't buy it. It's a custom shade.
Orange like mist.
It's a very strange colour, actually.
And where did they get this from? I'm always like, when it comes to auctions, I'm always like, where did they?
You want the provenance, don't you? Yeah.
Well, it's that they just sort of have a good rifle through the house after they've passed and pick up someone's grabbed a lipstick.
Well, these are all kind of held by the. It's obviously linked by Playboy, Hugh Hefner and Marilyn Monroe. A link. That's where the auctions kind of come about. So it's artefacts from the Playboy archives.
Right.
Has Noddy ever auctioned any of his outfits over the years?
Given it to charity more often, so that we don't have wardrobes full of kind of 70s gear at home.
Yeah, but has he still got the hat with the mirrors on?
Yes, of course he has. But
has he?
Is it in a glass case?
It's not. It's actually in a vault.
Is it?
Yeah, kept safe. He lent it out once to some sort of exhibition, and it came back damaged. So he won't ever do that again. So he says, but I mean, I do think it probably should be at some point in some sort of kind of music exhibition because it is quite iconic. But at the moment, it is kept under lock and key safely, and not in our house.
Yeah. I wouldn't trust you to dust it. I wouldn't trust you to dust it.
No, and also you're not allowed. No, I'm not allowed to touch guitars either.
Oh, really?
No, you don't touch guitars.
How many guitars has he got?
He wouldn't be able to tell you, and neither would I.
What, so many?
No, he wouldn't know.
Wow.
But again, they're kept in storage, and everything. But again, guitars and musicians, it's a strange thing. We once went to Paris, and we went in this little guitar shop, and there were all these amazing guitars on the wall, and I always had to lead him out sobbing because he was like, I used to have one like that. And of course, as you're a musician, you kind of developing and growing, you have to trade your guitar in for the better one and the better one. So all these amazing guitars that he now realises how much they'd be worth, he doesn't have every single one he ever had, but now he's able to collect ones he does want.
I had that with I know Brian May, not brilliantly well, but enough to have a good old chinwag with him. And his man Phil, who sadly passed away last year, I was hanging about with him one day, and Phil just went, "Oh, just hold this for a minute while I go at the bar." I said, "Yeah, what is it?" And it was Brian's guitar, you know, the one he built.
The one he built from a fireplace.
Yeah, and a knitting needle and all the rest of it. And it was like...
It's a guitar.
And it was just like... it's worth millions.
Absolutely.
Just hold this while I go at the bar.
Did you have a strum?
Oh no, it was in a bag.
Oh.
It was in the bag because I was like, yeah, what is it?
Yeah.
And it was the red, whatever it's called, I can't remember now. But it was just like,
yeah, no,
terrifying.
Guitars are very special, obviously, to musicians. But yeah, and apparently you can never have too many. Unlike shoes, apparently you can never have too many guitars.
I don't agree with that.
On that delightful note, we're out of time. Thank you both. We'll see you a little bit later on. Let's get the check on the weather for you with Alex.
A brighter outlook with Box Solar, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Good morning, I'm Alex Burkill here with your latest GB News weather forecast. Whilst it is going to turn much drier than of late through the weekend, it is also much colder too. As a result, some of us have woken up to a touch of frost and there are some patches of fog to watch out for. Through the day, eastern parts will be often quite cloudy, a few outbreaks of rain here, though notice in East Anglia we could see some brightness developing in the afternoon. Sunnier skies further west, a few coastal showers to watch out for. Across the far northeast of Scotland, it could be quite blustery with some showery rain for Orkney and Shetland. Temperatures will be a little bit below average for the time of year, so despite some winter sunshine, it's going to feel quite chilly. As we go through the evening and overnight, the cloud in the east is going to push a little bit further westward, so more central parts turning a bit cloudier for a time, but even so, the cloud's likely to break up at times, so there will be some clear spells around, and further west and northwest, particularly across Scotland and Northern Ireland, quite a lot of clear skies here. So again, it is going to turn quite chilly. There will be some frost around, as well as some fog or freezing fog patches for some. Some of that freezing fog then could linger well through the morning, perhaps even into the afternoon for some places, especially across central southern Scotland and for Northern Ireland too. Otherwise, across England and Wales, it's looking like a largely dry day. You couldn't rule out a few showers, mostly towards the coast, but a good deal of sunshine around. Despite the sunshine, though, again, it is going to feel quite chilly. In fact, temperatures might be a little bit lower tomorrow compared to today, so a real chilly feel to things. Bye-bye.
A brighter outlook with Box Solar, sponsors of weather on GB News.
You're with Breakfast on GB News. Plenty more to come at the...
Good afternoon, Britain.
Good afternoon, Britain. Join us, Tom and Emily,
to find out what's happening in the heart of Westminster
and why it matters to you.
Weekdays from midday, we bring you the most compelling stories from across the United Kingdom.
And from your doorstep to our inbox.
That's right, we want to hear from you.
GB News,
Britain's news channel.
Have a great Saturday night with me, Leo Curse, on the Saturday Night Showdown. It's a crazy world out there, so come and make fun of it with me, my panel of comedians, and a couple of people who actually know what they're talking about. This Saturday Night Showdown is your front row ticket to the clown show every Saturday, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
GB News, unlike other broadcasters, isn't obsessed with the London-Westminster bubble. We think there's a nation beyond the M25, and that's why we talk about the issues that matter across the land. Join me on State of the Nation, 8 to 9 o'clock, Monday to Thursday, on GB News. Daisy's listening, and you should too.
Your weekend starts here with Friday Night Live with me, Mark Dolan, 8 till 9 on GB News. Big stories, big guests and big laughs as we get you ready for a cracking weekend. That's Friday Night Live with Mark Dolan, Fridays 8 till 9 on GB News. Bring your own drinks, the admission's free.
In the GB Newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens. With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK, we're ready to give you accurate reporting every day. When the news breaks, we'll be there with bulletins on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Wake up to the headlines with Headliners every morning at 5 a.m. We treat you to the day's biggest stories before anyone else, 7 days a week. You can catch up on everything you need to know before you've even had your kippers. Headliners every morning at 5 a.m. only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Good morning to you, 7 o'clock, Saturday the 6th of January. Today, after a week of wild weather battering Britain, Labour's accused the Prime Minister of being asleep at the wheel as thousands of Brits face flood damage. We're going to be talking to one pub owner in Worcestershire whose pub has been flooded.
There's more bad news for the Prime Minister with yet another by-election on the way as former Energy Minister Chris Skidmore resigns. Catherine Forster has the latest.
Yes, a third by-election looming for Prime Minister Rishi Sunak, something he really doesn't need as we head for a general election late this year. It's going to be a very long year with a lot of politics.
We are getting a New Year's gift from the Chancellor. Cuts to national insurance come into force today in a bid to boost the Tories' electoral chances.
Now we've turned a corner, brought down inflation, the economy's doing better, we want to bring down the tax burden, and this 2% cut will make a very big difference to many families up and down the country.
Should pupils be allowed to ditch the pen for their exams? Well, an exam board is set to allow GCSE English students to type up exam answers in what's a move away from handwriting. We're debating that this hour.
And Aidan's got your sport, of course.
Yes, indeed. We're looking ahead to a big weekend of FA Cup action. But has the Grand Old Trophy lost some of its sparkle? We'll discuss that later on. And in golf, Rory McIlroy's softened stance towards the Saudi-backed Live Tour is described as a turning point for the sport. More later.
The weather's been a right stinker, hasn't it? Alex Burkle will bring you the all-important forecast.
I think most of us are hoping for something a little bit drier, and the good news is that is going to come this weekend. But it's also going to turn colder. I'll have the details shortly.
Morning to you. I'm Stephen Dixon.
Good morning, I'm Pip Thompson, and this is Breakfast on GB News.
In terms of the rats that we were talking about in the papers earlier on, where apparently we're loads and loads of rats about at the minute. A lot of it is down to bins, apparently. Diane in Dorset's got the answer. She lives on a farm. Morning, Diane. So we've got 3 cats. And that sorts out the rat problem. Well, it would.
Leon is on the same page as you, Diane. He says, when we first moved into our house, there was evidence of rats, but after bringing 10 cats in with us, the rats moved out.
Ooh, that's a lot of work. Doug says, and this is a really good point, one of the recent problems with rat infestation is that the wind keeps blowing the bins over. Would it be helpful to have the bins hooked together where possible? I think that's a really sensible idea.
A bad shout.
And I must apologise, apparently my mic's playing up. So I'll get that swapped over for you very shortly. But in the meantime, let's just look at the winter, considering the weather that with that wind that Doug mentioned, because it has been a brutal winter for a lot of us and struggling with storms, flooding, and we have potentially some more snow on the way.
A cold weather alert has been issued by the UK Health Security Agency, with temperatures set to plummet over the coming days.
Now, over the last few days, hundreds of homes devastated by flooding following a powerful storm and a week of heavy rainfall.
There are more than 250 flood warnings in force, most of which are in the Midlands, East Anglia and southern England, with residents forced to leave their properties.
Well, it's got political as well, because the Labour Party is now accusing the Prime Minister of being asleep at the wheel over their flood response, as they urgently demand the government convenes a Cobra-style task force to protect homes from further damage.
GB News' Jack Carson has this report from Ironbridge, I should say, in Shropshire.
Well, Storm Henk continues to have its impact here in Shropshire. Here in Ironbridge, where I am, the River Severn has burst its banks along multiple parts in this village. Luckily, the flood defences that were put up back at the end of December have been able to hold back a large volume of the water from getting to the village shops. But on the opposite side, houses have been flooded. Further upstream, the Boat Inn, which is a pub, has been flooded for the third time this year. And the environmental agencies say across the country, 1,000 properties have been impacted by flooding. In the Midlands, particularly in Nottinghamshire, a major incident, of course, was declared over the concerns in the rising levels of the River Trent, levels not seen previously since 2000. That is because of the other rivers that go into the Trent, particularly like the River Derwent, also reaching their peak levels, forcing that volume of the Trent upwards. That did also mean that a local over 55s caravan park on the outside of the city did have to be evacuated. But it is better news for the coming days because of the high pressure coming into the UK in terms of the weather. It's going to be a lot drier, and that of course is good news because the ground is so saturated because of the impact of Storm Henk, and that's why we've seen the kinds of flooding that we have seen over the last few days. So better news that dry weather is on the way, but the UK Health and Security Agency warning of a cold snap and plummeting temperatures and urging people to stay safe on the roads.
Well, we often say how awful it is for people directly affected by this. Let's get the view of someone who's facing this right now, the owner of the Rose and Crown in Severnstoke in Worcestershire, Andy Goodall. Good to see you, Andy. What's been going on?
Good morning, Steve. Good morning, Pip. Yeah, I mean, the water is actually starting to subside a little bit now, but for the last 5 days, I mean, I don't know whether you can tell or not, I'm very tired. I've been quite cold and wet as well. It's just been a really, really tough 5 days, and this is the third time in 12 months we've flooded. 5 times in 3 years. So it's becoming a bit tedious now, to say the least.
So if it's happening that often, Andy, what's happening in terms of flood defences in the area, and what do you do to try to protect the pub?
In regards to the flood defences, a project was set up about 10 years ago. It was a community-led scheme. And then the Environmental Agency and Worcester City Council then took over the project, and planning was actually passed about 4 years ago to build a bund around the village, around the back of the pub, and obviously the church as well at the same time. So safeguarding business and our homes. However, the red tape, the EA are having issues with appointing a contractor for the scheme. I mean, this should have been completed by now, and they barely even started, and I'm just not quite sure what they're going to do going forward. But the government needs to push this forward. It needs to go through. Severnstoke can't keep having this happening to them all the time.
And how long do you think that the clean-up's going to take you this time around? I mean, when could you reopen? And how worried are you about, the same thing could be happening again in another year or so?
Yeah, I mean, what we do, Pip, we damp-proof membrane the outside of the property. You can probably see that from the photographs. And then we sandbag it up. So where the water level outside gets to about a metre high, what sort of waist high, we only get about 1 inch, 2 inches inside, and that water coming through is fairly clean water. So we don't get any debris in here at all. So the cleanup is major, a deep clean furniture, and get through the kitchens. All the kitchen floors are now a resin. So it's a lot easier. We've tiled the restaurant area. So the cleanup is a lot easier, but you're looking maybe 2 weeks before we can actually get fully operational again.
And what about sorry, Stephen, I was just going to ask about the village in general, how affected it is. And is there quite a community spirit in place where people band together to get on top of all this?
We are very close as a community. We've got a WhatsApp group. A couple of neighbours have boats to get in and out. So we look after each other. If someone's going to the shop, does anybody want anything? Or I've picked up your post from a house around the corner. So everyone's really, really good. Like I said, we're a close community here in Sevenoaks. So that is really, really good.
What's going on with your insurance, Andy? Because with all of this, you can only imagine the premiums are going up whilst your trade is going down as a result of all this. It's like a perfect storm, isn't it?
Yeah, pardon the pun. Yeah, with insurance, I'm yet to find an insurance company will actually cover a commercial business. The local residents, they're able to get insurance for flood, but as a business, we can't do it. I think the government passed something some years ago, so residential could get the insurance, but nothing's been done on commercial businesses.
So how much is all this going to cost to fix all this damage?
The last time in 2021, when we had similar levels, I mean, this is slightly higher than 2021, it probably cost the business and putting the pub right about 60,000.
Goodness me. And that's on top of all your other outgoings, including those old energy bills that sky high still.
Energy bills, staff still need paying, HMRC need paying. It's that time of the year again. So it is very, very tough times at the moment. Very, very tough.
I'll tell you what, I'll do what I can when you're back reopened, Andy. We'll be popping round, me and my other half, and we'll have a pint in yours, because it looks like a beautiful place to come and have a drink and a bite to eat. Best of luck to you. Thank you very much indeed.
Thank you very much, both. Thanks for the time. Thank you. Bye-bye.
I mean, and this is the problem. If this ends up being the situation where, God forbid, he should go out of business, that's the heart of the community gone.
I know.
Which is a nightmare. There he is, trying to do his best.
And it looks like such a lovely, lovely pub. I mean, River Severn, my family live further up the River Severn in Worcestershire, and I was there earlier this week, and the bridge was shut, the river levels were so high, and I think in the last 24 hours there has been, the defences have been breached. So you just think, are they doing their job?
Probably not. Dredging. As everyone says, dredging. We need to do more dredging. I know the environmentalists don't like it. I understand why. But for heaven's sake, something can't carry on like this. Ridiculous. Anyway, let us know your thoughts on that. gbviews@gbnews.com.
A rough day for the Prime Minister today, because he's facing another by-election after MP Chris Skidmore announced he will resign as soon as possible.
Yeah, he's a former Energy Minister, planning to step down when Parliament returns next week because of new legislation for oil and gas drilling, which he says is wrong and will cause future harm.
The government says the planned expansion of new fossil fuels in the North Sea is vital to achieve energy security plans. Meanwhile, it's going to be a very busy year for politicians, as the leaders of the prospective parties have already outlined their messages to voters this week.
My working assumption is we'll have a general election in the second half of this year.
So I promise this: a new mindset, mission government, an understanding at the core of everything we do that it is our job to tackle tomorrow's challenges today.
2024, the year the voters finally get to pack up this awful, out-of-touch Conservative government, throw their disastrous policies into the skip.
Starmageddon is a risk near you in 2024. Prime Minister, you're not allowed to continue to run the country.
Let's talk to our political correspondent, Catherine Forster, who's here in the studio with us this morning. Let's talk about Mr Skidmore to begin with, should we? Why can't he... He's stepping down as an MP anyway at the next general election. Why can't he just hang on rather than actually put us all to the expense of a by-election?
Well, people in the government, of course, rather cross with Chris Skidmore today for exactly that reason. Yet another by-election, that's 3. There's going to be one in Wellingborough, there's going to be one more than likely in Blackpool South, and now Wellingborough. Basically, Chris Skidmore has decided that he just can't take it anymore. He was standing down anyway, but there is this vote in Parliament on Monday. Parliament comes back on Monday, the Offshore Petroleum Licensing Bill, basically about increasing the amount of oil and gas that we produce from the North Sea. Chris Skidmore was Energy Minister under Boris Johnson. He did a big net zero review. He feels very passionately that this is the wrong move. He says the future will judge harshly those that vote for this bill next week. And so he's saying he's resigning the Conservative whip. He wants to stand down as soon as possible. It poses all sorts of problems for the government. Another by-election. He had a 11,000 majority.
This is Kingswood in Gloucestershire.
Kingswood in Gloucestershire. So 11,000 in normal times would be safe, but we've seen Labour overturn 24,000 majorities in Mid-Bedfordshire. The other problem is that this seat is going to cease to exist at the next general election because of boundary changes. So whoever gets this seat, A, will only have it for a few months because there's a general election, and B, the seat's going to disappear anyway, so who would want it? So a real headache for Rishi Sunak, who obviously, new year, new start, hoped to get off on the front foot. He did manage to get a lot of headlines by saying the general election will be more than likely in the second half of the year, which I think most of us suspected anyway.
I've still got money on May.
Have you really?
Yeah.
OK. Well,
I think he's playing a game.
I reckon a week or two after November the 5th election in the States. So let's see.
We'll see.
I mean, Labour certainly are going to be ready for a May election just in case. And he did say working assumption, so he hasn't really closed anything down. But he was in Stockport yesterday. He was booed. He's obviously been criticised for not turning up at the floods. You could argue that that wouldn't be helpful, but, you know, perhaps people feel that he doesn't care or isn't as involved as he should be. And now this. So not the best start for this election year.
It's an easy goal for the Labour Party, though, isn't it, when they're now saying, oh, he's asleep at the wheel when it comes to the flooding and what needs to be done on flood defences. When we heard from Andy, the pub landlord, before, saying the government does need to get more and push more through. But this is this is proving to be an easy hit for the Labour Party.
Of course, but, you know, this is politics. They would, wouldn't they? And certainly the Environment Agency targets that they had in terms of additional homes they were going to be able to protect, those targets have been cut by 40% since they were announced in 2020. But, you know, we get a lot of rain. We're getting increasingly a lot of rain in a short period of time. And it does feel, presumably, to all the people who are losing houses, businesses, going to be in temporary accommodation for months. I know Rishi Sunak said that there's plenty of people on the ground for the Environment Agency, there's plenty of pumps, but we're seeing this over and over again. And sure, we always get flooding, but it does seem to be happening more. Plenty of houses built on floodplains.
What about farmers? I mean, the NFU is now calling for compensation for farmers because they're losing so much. There's talk of possible vegetable shortages. We've seen livestock drowning in the floods.
Yeah, desperate, isn't it? I mean, large parts of England literally underwater. My father was going across the country on a train the other day from London back to Yorkshire, and he just said it was incrable, you know, looking out.
You can't see what's the river and what's the field.
Yeah, exactly. And now, so the rain has stopped for now, but it's now going to be very cold, so we're going to have different challenges. So, yeah, a difficult start for the year. Meanwhile, Sir Keir Starmer setting out his stall. Richard Tice, the leader of Reform. So Ed Davey with his removals van. Everybody... We're going to have a long year of politics, aren't we? I mean, MPs are not even back.
Yeah, we are. You're going to be very busy, as are we all, as we said. Catherine, thanks very much indeed. At 18 minutes past 7, let's have a look at some of the other stories heading into the newsroom. And in the United States, new court documents, yes, even more, released overnight, have revealed claims that Prince Andrew had daily massages when he visited Jeffrey Epstein in Florida. In a transcript from evidence from 2009, Epstein's former housekeeper said the Duke of York was one of the celebrities who spent weeks at the Palm Beach home. It's the third round of documents to be unsealed.
The ITV drama Mr Bates versus the Post Office has led to the Metropolitan Police to begin looking at potential fraud offences committed in the Horizon IT scandal. More than 700 Post Office branch managers were accused of wrongdoing after faulty accounting software made it appear money was missing. It comes as 50 new potential victims of the scandal have contacted lawyers following the drama about the issue.
And President Biden has launched an attack on his predecessor, Donald Trump, on the third anniversary of the January 6th attacks on the Capitol building. It comes as the US Supreme Court has agreed to hear Donald Trump's appeal over Colorado's decision to disqualify him from its presidential primary elections. Now, in more positive news for millions of us today, it's like a little New Year giveaway. The government's reduction of national insurance takes effect today.
But just how big a giveaway is it? Announced in the Chancellor's autumn statement, the pre-election cut to national insurance from 12 to 10% will affect around 27 million payroll employees across the UK.
Well, this is what the Chancellor had to say.
Today is a very significant day because having turned the corner on inflation, brought it right down, the economy is doing much better, and that means we can start to bring down taxes. Today's cut in national insurance by 2% means that a typical family with 2 earners will be nearly £1,000 better off this year. That is really important in a cost of living crisis where people have been feeling real pressure on family budgets. But also it rewards work. It'll bring more people into the labour force, and that is good for growing the economy.
But some critics have questioned whether the timing of the tax cuts, with an election on the horizon, is just a bid to woo voters.
Well, our reporter Will Hollis looks at just how this might affect us.
Down to the nuts and bolts. At Alan Kent's Motors, a garage in Ilkeston, Derbyshire, the diary is full. Today's date stands out in any worker's calendar. The government's lowering national insurance, less tax on your earnings. Lewis, a mechanic, welcomes the new direction.
Well, I've got 2 young kids as well, so it'll go towards obviously feeding them, clothing them, so straight away that'll help with that.
Alan Kent Motors.
He's not alone. Chloe, who manages the garage, is looking forward to the extra cash.
With national insurance changing, it'll make us financially stable now. Obviously, we can have more luxuries in life rather than having to worry about all the bills coming out.
Most workers pay national insurance. It's one of the biggest taxes deducted from your pay automatically by your boss. It's dropping from 12 to 10% of earnings, benefiting 27 million people.
For the average earner on a salary of around £35,000, the saving on national insurance is about £450 in a year, £37 in a month.
We take decisions for the long term.
The Chancellor, Jeremy Hunt, announced the cut as part of the autumn statement. The timing of the tax cut hasn't gone unnoticed. A general election only months away.
They want the votes again, don't they?
It's good for the country as a whole.
They should have done it a long time ago.
But the savings might not be all they seem.
Yes, some tax cuts today, but in a bigger picture where taxes are going up.
Taxation is at the highest level since the end of the Second World War. Helen is Deputy Director at the Institute for Fiscal Studies.
Roughly those people earning over about £30,000, then this year alone there will be overall tax cuts, but it's part of a much broader trend where the government is freezing thresholds in the personal tax system, which is a really chunky tax increase. By 27-28, then the average earner on £35,000 will be paying about £450 more in tax.
Back at the garage, this motor's almost ready for the road. Fixing cars, fixing the country. Neither job can be rushed. Will Hollis, GB News in Ilkeston.
Let's talk to business and finance broadcaster Michael Wilson. Michael, good to see you. Shed a light on all of this then. Are we going to end up with more money in our pockets or less?
Nevertheless, I think let's just get one thing straight. This is not a giveaway. This is not a gift. This is the Chancellor returning our money, which we paid in tax, back to us. So there's no gift involved, even though it may well be wrapped up as some sort of present. It isn't at all. I think the lady from the Institute of Financial Studies had it about right. The general level of taxation, despite all this cut and so on, is rising, and unfortunately there is no magic money tree. Very small economy, and never gets into number 10 in the latter part of this year. It's going to face similar sort of problems. There is no magic. Taxes will have to rise. Taxes are at their highest since the end of the Second World War. How important is national insurance? Well, it's quite an old tax. It was brought in 1911 originally to fund the health care for and health insurance for poorer people, so that if they couldn't work because of illness, then they would get something from the public purse. But remember, this is not a giveaway. This is money that has been raised from us in taxes. The absolute bottom line about this is something which nobody, from whichever side of the house they've come, has actually solved, which is getting people back to work. Here's the bottom line, here's the thing. So on a cold January morning, why on earth are you getting up to go to a job that pays little more than that family who are sheltering at home from the cold on benefits, for good or bad? That is the absolute bottom line, and that's what all this is about, basically. It's trying to get people back to work. There are some families in this country, in cities in this country, who have not had anybody in a job for a couple of generations. That could mean in some families that everybody alive in that family has never had a job and has always existed on benefits. That's the sort of Britain that we're talking about today. Those sort of statistics are quite frightening, but the bottom line is how to get people back to work and paying tax. That's what all this is about.
Mm. And Michael, with this national insurance cut, the Resolution Foundation is saying the lowest paid will actually face the biggest hit here.
Well, the band of people getting money back is that £12,000 when you start to have to pay national insurance, and the average saving for people within that band from 12 to about, I think sums about £50,000 within that band is about £450 a year. Unfortunately, if you don't get up to that 12,000, you're probably not very well off, and secondly, spending money on the things where the cost of living is the highest, i.e. heating and eating. And that's what I think the Resolution Foundation is coming from.
OK, Michael, good to see you, as always. Thanks very much indeed. Oh, it's got another message.
Oh, it all feels a bit like doom and gloom, doesn't it? We think we're delivering, you know, what could be good news for some people, and then you get into the nitty-gritty of it, and it's really not quite what it says on the tin.
It is quite doom and gloom, isn't it? But then what do you do about it? And then what are the options on the table? People have outlined it all. Cut VAT. You know, it costs a lot of money to do that. Reduce income tax, well, or increase the thresholds. There's all these sort of options, but it's about what we can afford. Keir Starmer's saying we can't afford anything for a couple of years. So this is sort of better than we'd get from Labour as it currently stands at the moment, till they've been through the books properly. But we're in a bit of a mess, no two ways about it.
Well, let's talk about another mess, and that's our weather, because so many homes affected over the last few days with this Storm Henk aftermath. It is getting colder, it is getting more settled, but that brings with it its own problems. Here's your forecast with Alex Burkill.
Good morning, I'm Alex Burkill here with your latest GB News weather forecast. Whilst it is going to turn much drier than of late through the weekend, it is also much colder too. As a result, some of us have woken up to a touch of frost, and there are some patches of fog to watch out for. Through the day, eastern parts will be often quite cloudy, a few outbreaks of rain here, though notice in East Anglia we could see some brightness developing in the afternoon. Sunnier skies further west, a few coastal showers to watch out for. Across the far northeast of Scotland, it could be quite blustery with some showery rain for Orkney and Shetland. Temperatures will be a little bit below average for the time of year, so despite some winter sunshine, it's going to feel quite chilly. As we go through the evening and overnight, the cloud in the east is going to push a little bit further westward, so more central parts turning a bit cloudier for a time. But even so, the cloud's likely to break up at times, so there will be some clear spells around. And further west and northwest, particularly across Scotland and Northern Ireland, quite a lot of clear skies here. So again, it is going to turn quite chilly. There will be some frost around, as well as some fog or freezing fog patches for some. Some of that freezing fog then could linger well through the morning, perhaps even into the afternoon for some places, especially across central southern Scotland and for Northern Ireland too. Otherwise, across England and Wales, it's looking like a largely dry day. You couldn't rule out a few showers, mostly towards the coast, but a good deal of sunshine around. Despite the sunshine though, again, it is going to feel quite chilly. In fact, temperatures might be a little bit lower tomorrow compared to today, so a real chilly feel to things. Bye-bye.
Oh, sounds reasonably cheerful about it, doesn't he? Does Alex? It's miserable, Alex. Mind you, I like his jacket.
It will be nice to have a bit of sunshine.
Yes, well...
Always helps lift our spirits.
It will, but the cold, though. It's getting out of bed when it's freezing cold.
Just get your layers on, get your hats on.
Yeah. Put the pyjamas, I'm going to start wearing pyjamas. Long johns. I've got some long johns.
Oh, the vision, Stephen, the vision.
Maybe the long johns are going to have to come out. A proper northerner me. Anyway, still to come. Should we ditch these? Oh, I love pens. I love
pens as well.
Oh, yeah, that's a nice one.
I thought this was a joke when I first saw this story.
No, but I can see the sense in it. Anyway, it's about should pupils be allowed to ditch the pen in exams?
No.
It might be that we're all going to move towards computers. But anyway, we're going to be debating that in a couple of minutes.
Join us every night on GB News at 11 p.m. for Headliners, which is 3 top comedians going through the next day's news stories, which is exactly what you need, because when the establishment has gone crazy, you need some craziness to make sense of it.
Headliners. You don't have to bother reading the newspaper. We've got it covered for you. Every night at 11 p.m. and repeated every morning at 5 a.m. We won't send you to sleep like some of the other paper review shows out there.
So join us 11 p.m. every night on GB News.
The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I think the most exciting bit for me is talking to people.
People who I think are ignored often by the major news channels. We're going to give news they want to hear. There's a voice there that needs to be heard. I think there's a chance here for a diversity of opinion to be expressed, which you don't find elsewhere. It's really exciting.
We don't hold back. We're free to say how decisions that are taken here
affect us all around the country. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Michelle Dewberry, and I'm not here to tell you what to think. I'd much rather hear what you have to say. So, send in your opinions to gbviews@gbnews.com. Keep them clean, and you never know, I might read them out. With my panel here on Jubes & Co, we debate, we get stuck into the issues of the day on a show where all views are welcome, especially yours. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
In the GB Newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens. With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK, we're ready to give you accurate reporting every day. When the news breaks, we'll be there with bulletins on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Your weekend starts here with Friday Night Live with me, Mark Dolan, 8 till 9 on GB News. Big stories, big guests and big laughs as we get you ready for a cracking weekend. That's Friday Night Live with Mark Dolan. Fridays 8 till 9 on GB News. Bring your own drinks. The admission's free.
Good afternoon, Britain.
Good afternoon, Britain. Join us, Tom and Emily,
To find out what's happening in the heart of Westminster.
and why it matters to you.
Weekdays from midday, we bring you the most compelling stories from across the United Kingdom.
And from your doorstep to our inbox.
That's right, we want to hear from you.
GB News,
Britain's news channel.
Big news, big debates, big opinion. Patrick Christie's Tonight is the week's biggest show. Every weekday, 9 to 11 p.m, we've got the inside track on the day's top stories. There'll be sharp takes you won't get anywhere else. We will set the news agenda, not just follow it, and I want to bring you along for the ride. Whatever it is, we'll have our finger on the pulse. It's news, but it's this close to entertainment. Patrick Christie's Tonight, 9 to 11 p.m, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
GB News is Britain's news channel, and now you can support it. All you have to do is scan that QR code that's up on your screen right now, or you can go to gbnews.com/support and become a GB News member. You'll have fantastic benefits. We're also going to organise special events where you as GB News members can meet the presenters, the on-screen faces. Scan the QR code or go to gbnews.com/support. Thank you so much.
7:33. Good morning. You're watching and listening to Breakfast with Stephen and Pip.
Do that again. Good morning.
Good morning. It's because I'm making the most of the fact that my voice is sort of warming up a bit now. Because I've still got a bit this cold that's doing the rounds. I'm still got the lingering after effects. And that's about 3 weeks ago now.
Yeah.
Anyway, you've had it, haven't
everybody's
you?
coming a cropper. Yeah, cold.
Catherine Forster's
COVID's
had
doing
it.
the rounds again.
Anne's got COVID. Yeah.
Yeah, it doesn't go away.
Terrible.
Anyway, we keep a safe distance.
Yes, yes. Well, from Aidan McGee, who sat here in the wings waiting to go, we'd never get too close to Aidan. It's true. Anyway, look, let's talk exams, should we? Because, which thankfully is a thing of the past for me. From next year, an exam board will allow GCSE English pupils, that's language and literature, to type up their answers on a computer instead of using a pen.
I think this is an absolute load of you-know-what.
Oh, you old cynic.
I do. Pearson, which runs exam board Edexcel, is aiming for GCSE students to be able to sit on-screen exams in the core subject by next summer if they choose to do so. Oh, isn't it so nice to get a choice? You never got a choice in my day.
No.
You had a pen, you had a piece of paper and you got on with it.
Yes, I know, but we're old and youngsters nowadays don't do a lot of writing. Let's talk to journalist and broadcaster Julie Cook and chairman for the Campaign for Real Education, Chris McGovern. Morning to you both. Is this a good idea, Chris?
It's going to de-skill pupils, isn't it? It's very important that youngsters can write, learn to write. And if you say to youngsters that you can use a word processor, computer, it's a disincentive. And I think it really is a lazy way of proceeding. But from the point of view of the exam board, it's a great idea because it's cheaper. And you can mark some of these exams by artificial intelligence. So there's a financial incentive. But I think it's a great shame when we disincentivize children from handwriting. It's part of the growing up skill we all need. And therefore, I think it's sending entirely the wrong message. So, yeah, good for making money for the exam boards, not so good for most pupils. But, of course, there are all some pupils, some who are disadvantaged because they have disabilities. They need to be able to use a computer. But for the majority, no, they should stick to those basic skills. Look, I'm the chairman of the Campaign for Real Education. Handwriting is part of real education, as, of course, are other things.
But it's useful. I mean, look, handwriting is a skill which is useful for you, Chris, and it's useful for us. Is it really going to be useful for someone who's 15, 16 right now? They're not doing any of it. Why bother?
Well, it's extremely useful because it's an additional skill. Look, we can read by using the computer as well. We don't need to actually read. We can actually have a computer reading for us. So we don't need to read. We don't even need to think because we have artificial intelligence. So what we're doing is de-skilling, taking away basic skills. Of course, most of the time, we use a computer. I'm writing a book at the moment, I use a computer, but we need the basic skills as well. And what happens when the computer battery runs out or there's a technical fault, which is sure to happen, by the way? I know what's going to happen if we go along this pathway. There will be problems. I sound like Cassandra, the old Greek prophetess. She used to predict the future. Everybody thought she was wrong, but she was always right, but no one ever believed her. I'll tell you now, there will be problems with computerized exams. There will be problems. You heard it here. Let's check back in a few years' time.
Julie, is it de-skilling youngsters? And also, actually, is it making them lazy? Because if you're typing and you're using a computer, then you've got the spell checker and the spell corrector. You're not actually having to use this.
I disagree with Cassandra, our prophetess. I think that this is the future. My son is 15 and he will take his GCSEs next year. And he's already been told there's a likelihood he can use a laptop. Now, I'm old fashioned. I'm from Generation X. I used a pen in all my exams, but I also write books like our Co-Debater and I use my laptop. And this generation, Generation Alpha, is the first generation to live in a completely tech world. Just like we started with writing on cave walls, then we moved on to slabs of rock, then we used chalks, and in the 6th century we used the quill, and then we moved on to the pen. Each few years, few generations, we move on to something new. And unfortunately, I love a pen. I write loads of things with pens, but this generation won't be using pens. They write notes in their phone, they write notes on computers, and their lives, their careers will be heavily based on computers and tech. So why not equip them with that now? A pen won't be very useful for them.
Chris?
Well, it's not a question of saying we're not going to be using computers. Of course, children use computers all the time. The whole point is, of course, that you need to multiply the skills. You need to have more than just computer skills. And I can guarantee the bright kids at the posh schools, they're going to be still learning handwriting. And it's very important that we retain the skill, because there are occasions, of course, when you do need to use a pen and a pencil. And it's a question of the message you send out to children. Is it worth making the effort? Should we exercise the brain, or should we take the easy option? The easy option is word processing. We need to do both, except when you have a child with a disability. So I'm saying let's have plenty of skills, including handwriting. And I think most people in the country would agree with that. Let's have a variety of skills, including word processing, but also handwriting. And around the world, they'll continue to use handwriting. And sometimes we do need to fill things in on the spot with a pen.
Julie, what about the notion as well that, a pen and a piece of paper is incredibly cheap? Not every family can necessarily afford a computer for somebody to be typing up everything at home.
That is very true, and that's where I agree there's going to have to be, if this is rolled out nationwide, then the government, whoever government is in charge, is going to have to take that on the nose. There's going to have to be computers given out by the state to state school and to children who can't, families who can't afford that. But as I say, I'm old-fashioned. I like a pen as much as anyone else, and I love handwriting and I love letters. But I think this generation, as a mother of a 15-year-old, I reluctantly am seeing how the world is changing and how so much now is online, so much now is not with a pen. And it saddens me, but it's just, we have to face it. This is the world they're going to live in.
Mm-hmm. Well, look, if you've got a view on that at home, then do let us know. It's GB News, PO Box 278. Maybe get on your computer and just email us, gbviews@gbnews.com. Julie Cook, Cassandra McGovern, thank you both very much indeed. Appreciate it.
See, I've got all my notes for work, all handwritten, in my notebook, which I'd much rather do than I would type everything up.
Oh. Well, to be fair, it goes in my brain if I write it down, and it doesn't if I type it. But then, we're hurtling towards our 50s, darling.
Excuse me?
Yes, you are. You're the wrong side of 45.
Hurtling?
You're the wrong side of 45.
Personal.
As is Aidan McGee. You're further off than I am. I've only got 6 weeks left. Aidan McGee.
Morning to you both. I got an Olivetti typewriter, actually, in 1991 for my birthday. Yeah, and I typed everything from then on. But my English teacher said to me, no, I want you to write longhand.
Yeah.
He thought it was lazy, typing.
Yeah, and as a child, it was, again, showing how old-fashioned I am, but it was something, improving your handwriting. There was something really satisfying about that when the teacher used to say how much better your handwriting.
My handwriting was like printing, and it slowed me down. But I actually did get a ballpoint pen for Christmas.
Did you?
Which I'll be showcasing on the show sometimes.
Well, I got this for Christmas.
Did you? Is it personalised?
Off my parents. Yes, it is.
Oh, very nice.
There you go.
I got a personalised one.
Very nice. Sport. Talk sport.
Yes, the romance of the FA Cup. We've got 4 non-league sides still left in the competition. Non-league Maidstone United, bottom. They're the lowest-ranked team left in the tournament. They face Stevenage at 12:30. And when we talk about the romance, the magic, we tend to look at it through the prism of the biggest clubs. Yeah, they don't really care about it. The prize money isn't very big. It's a bit of an inconvenience to their schedule. It's more games. It's more pressure on the players, etc., etc. But I always remember in my previous jobs going to some of the non-league clubs, and you really then see what it means to them. Interesting story at Aldershot Town. Their manager, Tommy Widrington, his son is one of the dancers in Strictly.
Oh, really?
Kai Widrington,
Oh, yes,
yeah. I remember Tommy playing so old. I saw him play for Port Vale, Grimsby and Southampton. And then elsewhere we've got Newport County against Eastleigh. As I say, these matter to these clubs. And David Mel's done an interesting pull-out today. And they're the only ones to really properly shine a light on this. But the front page of the pull-out is, we must preserve the game's beating heart. And inside, it goes on to say, I'll just read it rather than holding it up. But it says, piece by piece, the game's rampant commercialisation has eaten away at the FA Cup's core. Please treasure what the third round means. And it is an institution. I think part of the problem is that 40 years ago this weekend, we had one kickoff, Pip, on a Friday, 7:15. Every other match on a Saturday, 3 o'clock. Contrasted with this year, 1 on Thursday, 3 last night. I was at Tottenham, three different start times. 10 today at 3 o'clock, 1 at 12:45, 1 at 12:30, and 5 at 5:30, and then we've got 7 2 p.m. kickoffs tomorrow. It's kind of staggered. I know people want to see it on TV, but the way it was, with more games kicking off at 3 o'clock on a Saturday, it encouraged people to get out of the house and go and watch matches and support the clubs and put money through the gate.
Yeah, no, I think that's a very valid point. Aidan, we've got to leave it there, but we'll see you in the next hour. Thanks very much indeed. Coming up for you, we've got the headline makers with Susan and Steph. See you in a minute.
(2024), a battleground year.
The year the nation decides.
As the parties gear up their campaigns for the next general election.
Who will be left standing when the British people make one of the biggest decisions of their lives?
Who will rise?
And who will fall?
Let's find out together.
For every moment, the highs, the lows, the twists and turns.
We'll be with you for every step of this journey.
In 2024, GB News is Britain's election channel.
GB News, unlike other broadcasters, isn't obsessed with the London-Westminster bubble. We think there's a nation beyond the M25, and that's why we talk about the issues that matter across the land. Join me on State of the Nation, 8 to 9 o'clock, Monday to Thursday, on GB News. Daisy's listening, and you should too.
Wake up to the headlines with Headliners every morning at 5 a.m. We treat you to the day's biggest stories before anyone else, 7 days a week. You can catch up on everything you need to know before you've even had your kippers. Headliners every morning at 5 a.m, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my 2 comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Now then, Lee Anderson here. Join me on GB News on my show, The Real World, every Friday at 7 p.m.
I'm not eating bloody cat. Are you
Delicious.
mental?
Open your mouth. OK, here comes a train.
Reminds me of the scene in Singing in the Rain.
Adam, is that a good one?
Whoa! Join me at 7 on GB News, Britain's news channel.
What you get for breakfast is something that, if we do our jobs right, you will wake up to news that you didn't know the night before.
It's a conversation. It's not just me and Eamon.
We want to get to know you, and we want you to get to know us.
From 6, it's Breakfast with Eamon and Isabel.
Monday to Thursdays on GB News,
Britain's news channel.
Have a great Saturday night with me, Leo Curse, on the Saturday Night Showdown. It's a crazy world out there, so come and make fun of it with me, my panel of comedians, and a couple of people who actually know what they're talking about. The Saturday Night Showdown is your front row ticket to the clown show every Saturday, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Good afternoon, Britain.
Good afternoon, Britain. Join us, Tom and Emily,
To find out what's happening in the heart of Westminster.
and why it matters to you.
Weekdays from midday, we bring you the most compelling stories from across the United Kingdom.
And from your doorstep to our inbox,
That's right, we want to hear from you.
GB News,
Britain's news channel.
Every Sunday from 11, join Michael Portillo.
There'll be topical discussion, looking at the week before and the week to come. So kick back and relax at 11 a.m. on Sundays on GB News with me, Michael Portillo. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
When the news happens, it happens here.
And really important breaking news.
Breaking news this morning.
On TV, radio and online, the news starts here on Britain's newsroom.
All the biggest stories and the answers that you need from across the UK and beyond.
Join Britain's newsroom from 9:30 on GB News.
The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
7:47, should we go through the headline makers today with Showbiz Report? Showbiz Report doesn't do you justice, Stephanie.
I'm really thinking of having a rebrand this year because I was like, one day I'm going to write my book and I'll be like, I was known as the Showbiz Reporter on GB News.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think I need a rebrand this year.
Showbiz Queen, Stephanie Tetch is
Goddess.
here.
We could go
Goddess. And Goddess.
Showbiz Goddess.
And, well, just say plain old author, but you're far more than that, Susan Holder, as well.
Journalist, general pain in the neck.
Yeah, oh, yeah, that'll do, yeah. Good to see you both this morning. Stephanie, let's start with the Mail, should we?
Yeah.
What's Penny Mordaunt saying?
Let's talk about slavery. It's a very uncomfortable subject, especially for British people. I think Americans, they're quite open about it, where British people, we kind of sweep it underneath the carpet a bit. And I loved this piece by Penny Mordaunt in the Mail today, where she's saying that we shouldn't be ashamed of our past. And I didn't even know this. She was saying Britain was the first country to abolish slavery. And she's backing a campaign where there will be a memorial built to the Royal Navy's West African Squadron. And they were the first people to help free up to like 150,000 slaves between 1807 and 1867. And she's saying like a lot of people are against this because, you know, a lot of the younger
We just don't want to talk about it.
We just don't want to talk about it. And the younger generation as well have this idea.
We don't want to talk about it and we're told to apologise.
That's the problem. And I think, you know, the younger generation feel like, especially for young black children, they might be thinking they're living in a country that is racist, and that's not the case here. And I think it's so important to talk about these kind of sides of history, because I remember when I was growing up in school, all I learnt about was Martin Luther King, Nelson Mandela, and that's it. And when they talk about slavery, it's such a complex, you know, history towards it. So I do feel, instead of saying, let's rip down statues, let's erase all this, let's talk about the good, positive stuff like that. So I think Penny's onto something. She's going to be revealing the designs later on this month, and I, for one, look forward to seeing it. And I do hope we can have these conversations where it's less controversial and more being educational for everybody.
Yeah. She puts it very well as well, because she says, yes, Britain had a role in the slave trade, yes, people made money out of it, but our biggest contribution to the evil trade was to end it. And that kind of balanced opinion is very, very interesting to kind of look at. But we don't educate children in school enough about all forms of history. I think I did the Romans and Henry VIII just on repeat. We didn't seem to do anything else. It was just very odd.
And I think a lot of black parents now, they want to teach their kids history now, black history and the slave trade. And I do think it's important even for black people to know about this side of the slave trade.
Where would this memorial be? Do we know?
It's going to be...
There we go.
Just wondered where it was.
They haven't said where it's going to be, but they're just working on the designs at the moment. They're working on designs, but I think it will be in Portsmouth.
Yeah.
Portsmouth would be the sensible place.
Yeah, they're working on the designs.
Because she's MP for Portsmouth, isn't she?
Yeah.
What's this, Susan? This clip that we've got about girl math.
Well, I think you should watch the clip because it will explain girl math, if you've not, or girl maths, as we would say here.
Yeah.
But I think the people in the clip, maybe they sound Australian to me, but it's two girls out shopping explaining very well what girl math is.
All right, let's have a look.
I think it's a no-brainer.
$2.50 divided by 10, $25 a wear.
Yeah.
For 10 wears.
You'll wear it way more than 10 times.
So $5 a wear for 20 wears.
So cheap.
Yeah.
You're literally buying it from the dollar store.
It's like getting a coffee every time you wear it.
Yes.
Which I'll do anyway. No,
you can
add more.
No, if you forfeit your coffee every time you wear that, then it's basically free. We cracked girl math. That is so good. We cracked girl math.
That's crazy.
It's not quite... No, it's very logical.
Because they're talking themselves into buying an expensive bag and say it's basically free.
The logic they were using was, if they wear it a certain number of times and you divide the times by the cost of the bag, it was going to work out for $5. So that's the price of a coffee. And I always have a coffee when I go out. Well, if you don't have the coffee, then it's free. I think it's genius.
I think that's completely logical.
I think it's girl math.
You're not serious. Are you lot
girl math.
Are you lot checking the...
No.
No.
I have to say, my husband has taught me girl math over many years because I was the sort of person who would go out, come back with a kind of... And he's like, why have you bought this and why have you bought that? Why are you shopping at TK Maxx and New Look? Buy one good thing. And I'm like, oh, no, but this is reasonable. He said, but this is all rubbish. And he has taught me that buy good and buy well and you keep it for longer. Divide it by the number of times you wear it and by the value it brings to your life. If you're going to buy something expensive, also, we've had this conversation agreement, wear it. Don't just put it away, and then girl math.
Do you never do that and think, well, how long is this going to
I just think, how much is it, and can I afford it?
Well, you
and
have to afford it.
And if I can't afford it, the idea that you would buy, what was that, $300? That handbag?
£250,
right.
for a bag.
And they're saying it's an expensive bag.
It's an investment.
And she's saying it's basically free.
Because
no, it isn't. No, it isn't.
Well, it is because she goes to coffee.
She's not going to have the coffee she wants.
Oh, she's not going to have the coffee, is she?
That's what she was saying, and I believe her. And so I think
you lot are mad.
But it's not like it's a handbag that costs like... I mean, I'm never one for a handbag that costs the price of a small car. I do think there's, or a watch that you would be worried somebody would take your arm off to get. I do think nice things are nice, but there is a tipping point, isn't there? But if you can afford it, life is short by the dress.
I think it's lethal for someone like me who is a shopaholic, though, because I will try, say, girl math for everything. And when it comes down to me giving up something, I won't give up something, and then I'll just have the expensive dress there.
Exactly.
On top of the coffee too.
Don't buy any leggings, though, from Lululemon if you're carrying a little bit of weight.
It's former CEO Chip Wilson. He's made some damaging comments about leggings, and he's saying that the brand, he stepped away from the brand 8 years ago, but he's saying that the brand is trying too much to be diverse and inclusive, and in much to their detriment, because he's saying that fat women, and I don't like using the word fat, I really don't, but he was saying that fat women should not be wearing leggings which are see-through, and he's saying it's much to the detriment of the brand, and he's saying
saying as well that it's because they're fat, they're see-through, because it's stretching the fabric, which you could argue, Chip, if that is your name indeed, that maybe you should make better leggings rather than fat-shaming women.
Wear what you are comfortable in.
And that's the thing, we've had this whole big trend for body positivity over the past few years, where I think women are feeling more comfortable to wear different things, and I feel like if you feel comfortable to wear something, why not? Why do you have to be under the scrutiny of someone who will never wear a pair of leggings in their life?
Well, I'll never throw mine away then. Thank you, ladies. Here's the weather.
Good morning, I'm Alex Burkill here with your latest GB News weather forecast. Whilst it is going to turn much drier than of late through the weekend, it is also much colder too. As a result, some of us have woken up to a touch of frost, and there are some patches of fog to watch out for. Through the day, eastern parts will be often quite cloudy, a few outbreaks of rain here, though notice in East Anglia we could see some brightness developing in the afternoon. Sunnier skies further west, a few coastal showers to watch out for. Across the far northeast of Scotland, it could be quite blustery with some showery rain for Orkney and Shetland. Temperatures will be a little bit below average for the time of year, so despite some winter sunshine, it's going to feel quite chilly. As we go through the evening and overnight, the cloud in the east is going to push a little bit further westward, so more central parts turning a bit cloudier for a time, but even so, the cloud's likely to break up at times, so there will be some clear spells around, and further west and northwest, particularly across Scotland and Northern Ireland, quite a lot of clear skies here. So again, it is going to turn quite chilly. There will be some frost around, as well as some fog or freezing fog patches for some. Some of that freezing fog then could linger well through the morning, perhaps even into the afternoon for some places, especially across central southern Scotland and for Northern Ireland too. Otherwise, across England and Wales, it's looking like a largely dry day. You couldn't rule out a few showers, mostly towards the coast, but a good deal of sunshine around. Despite the sunshine though, again, it is going to feel quite chilly. In fact, temperatures might be a little bit lower tomorrow compared to today, so a real chilly feel to things. Bye-bye.
Your weekend starts here with Friday Night Live with me, Mark Dolan, 8 till 9 on GB News. Big stories, big guests and big laughs as we get you ready for a cracking weekend. That's Friday Night Live with Mark Dolan, Fridays 8 till 9 on GB News. Bring your own drinks, the admission's free.
In the GB Newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens. With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK, we're ready to give you accurate reporting every day. When the news breaks, we'll be there with bulletins on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Big news, big debates, big opinion. Patrick Christie's Tonight is the week's biggest show. Every weekday, 9 to 11 p.m, we've got the inside track on the day's top stories. There'll be sharp takes you won't get anywhere else. We will set the news agenda, not just follow it, and I want to bring you along for the ride. Whatever it is, we'll have our finger on the pulse. It's news, but it's this close to entertainment. Patrick Christie's Tonight, 9 to 11 p.m, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join us every night on GB News at 11 p.m. for Headliners, which is 3 top comedians going through the next day's news stories, which is exactly what you need, because when the establishment has gone crazy, you need some craziness to make sense of it.
Headliners. You don't have to bother reading the newspaper. We've got it covered for you. Every night at 11 p.m. and repeated every morning at 5 a.m. We won't send you to sleep like some of the other paper review shows out there.
So join us 11 p.m. every night on GB News,
the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Michelle Dewberry, and I'm not here to tell you what to think. I'd much rather hear what you have to say. So, send in your opinions to gbviews@gbnews.com. Keep them clean, and you never know, I might read them out. With my panel here on Jubes & Co, we debate, we get stuck into the issues of the day on a show where all views are welcome, especially yours. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Tired of the usual focus-tested, pre-prepared Westminster runaround? Well, so am I.
So you want higher taxes?
Is your department to blame for this? Are you rethinking this policy? Every Sunday at 9:30, I'll be sitting down with those in power to get the truth about the issues affecting you.
Let's be honest, we've known about the cost pressures of this project for years, not months.
That's the Camilla Tominey Show, a politics show with personality. On GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I think the most exciting bit for me is talking to people.
People who I think are ignored often by the major news channels. We're going to give news they want to hear. There's a voice there that needs to be heard. I think there's a chance here for a diversity of opinion to be expressed, which you don't find elsewhere. It's really exciting.
We don't hold back. We're free to say how decisions that are taken here
affect us all around the country. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Good afternoon, Britain.
Good afternoon, Britain. Join us, Tom and Emily,
To find out what's happening in the heart of Westminster.
and why it matters to you.
Weekdays from midday, we bring you the most compelling stories from across the United Kingdom.
And from your doorstep to our inbox.
That's right, we want to hear from you.
GB News,
Britain's news channel.
Good morning to you. 8 o'clock, Saturday, the 6th of January. Today, after a week of wild weather battering Britain, Labour have accused the Prime Minister of being asleep at the wheel as thousands of Brits face flood damage.
When people talk about I felt
There's more bad news for the Prime Minister, with yet another by-election on the way as former Energy Minister Chris Skidmore resigns. We're speaking with Labour Party Chair Annalise Dodds shortly. And Catherine Forster, our political correspondent, has the latest this morning.
Yes, another by-election, something Rishi Sunak could really do without. This one in Kingswood in Gloucestershire, former Energy Minister Chris Skidmore deciding that he's just had enough.
A New Year's gift from the Chancellor, so we're told. Cuts to national insurance come into force today in a bid to boost the Tories' electoral chances.
Now we've turned a corner, brought down inflation, the economy's doing better. We want to bring down the tax burden, and this 2% cut will make a very big difference to many families up and down the country.
Also, Aidan McGee is here with you, sport.
Yes, good morning. There's a major FA Cup showdown in the offing in the North East today as Sunderland welcome Newcastle in the FA Cup third round. We'll be looking ahead to that and many other third round ties. Meanwhile, in the tennis, Rafa Nadal has suffered an injury setback as he bids to be fit for the Australian Open in 9 days' time.
Also coming up for you, with the weather being so bad, we'll have a full forecast with Alex Burkill.
I think most of us are hoping for something a little bit drier, and the good news is that is going to come this weekend. But it's also going to turn colder. I'll have the details shortly.
Good morning to you. I'm Stephen Dixon.
I'm Pip Thompson, and this is Breakfast on GB News.
Well, the idea of ditching pens has not gone down too well with a lot of you this morning. It's the idea that children doing the GCSEs, certainly it would start in 2025, and some English language and literature exams may be able to do it on laptops instead. But it causes problems. Are we losing skills? Julie in Shropshire says, I disagree with all of this. My grandchildren can't even tell the time. The clock is right above Alexa, and they still ask her what time it is. The eldest is 18, the youngest 13.
Goodness me. Lynn makes the point, how are these children going to sign their names to prove their identity if they're allowed to use only computers? Well, you can do your signature, can't you, by computer these days?
Well, you can. Plus, do the signatures really identify you now? Mine's never the same twice. Do it all by thumbprint and things, don't you? Simon in Bracknell. Simon. He says, what if you get stuck on an island? How would you write SOS or help in the sand? Well, Simon...
That's a fair point, but the chances of that happening to most of us are limited.
Yes, it's a bit limited, Simon. I wouldn't worry about that too much. I wouldn't let it ruin your morning.
Dean, good morning. You make a good point, saying, what about the students who are slow typers? My daughter's friend types a letter using one finger. How are they going to cope when they're up against the clock in an exam?
Well, you don't have to do it. That's the thing. You don't have to do it. It's going to be a choice. But at some point, of course, the way kids are now, most of them can bang it all out without worrying. So I don't know. I mean, I like writing. I like pens. But I sort of think, are we evolving? And are kids now evolving so that everything is just phones, laptops and all the rest of it? Do they really need to do this?
I'm still a stickler for spelling and grammar. And if you're not writing and you're typing, it just gets corrected and you're not actually logging in your brain what that correction is. I just think it makes you lazy when it comes to basic grammar.
Well, there is that. I'll tell you what I noticed. Not to bore you too long with this, but I was on a messaging app to the bank yesterday where, and probably for security reasons, it doesn't do the autocorrect on your phone, and my typing was terrible. Not that my spelling's good, but the mistyping, where you're doing it on your phone keyboard, it must automatically correct it to what it thinks you're meant to be saying. So it was a real pain yesterday doing that.
Yeah.
So that did strike me. But anyway,
even when I do texts, I double check them, and I'm so cross with myself if there's a spelling error, and then I just blame predictive text.
Oh, now we all know it's her own fault, really. Keep your thoughts on that coming through. If you would like to type to us, it's gbviews@gbnews.com. But our main story this morning, and it's turning out to be a brutal winter, and for those of us struggling with storms, flooding, there is potentially some further heavy snow on the way.
A cold weather alert has been issued by the Health Security Agency, with temperatures set to plummet over the coming days.
Now, over the last week or so, hundreds of homes have been devastated by flooding following powerful storms and a week of heavy rainfall.
There are more than 250 flood warnings in force, most of which are in the Midlands, East Anglia and southern England, with many people forced to leave their properties.
Well, it's all got political as well, as you would perhaps expect. The Labour Party has accused the Prime Minister of being asleep at the wheel over their flood response. They're urgently demanding the government convenes a Cobra-style task force to protect homes from further damage.
Joining us from Newark-on-Trent in Nottinghamshire, which has been badly affected, is our East Midlands reporter, Will Hollis. Good morning, Will. How is it looking there this morning?
Good morning. Well, you can see from the pictures that there is still a lot of water here in Newark-on-Trent, across the district here in Nottinghamshire, particularly around villages along the banks of the River Trent. There has been extensive flooding. Over the last few days, we've been hearing about Bleasby and Gunthorpe. Where we are right now along the in Newark, a little bit further along the River Trent, there is still lots of water, but from people that are here that have just been coming down this road, they've said that quite fortunately the water has started to subside. We've spoken to some of the teams from Nottinghamshire Fire and Rescue as well, who say that right now, thank God, there is no crews out doing evacuations. Now, that is a good sign that they say, but that could all change because there is still a lot of water coming down the River Trent from in Nottingham, where we've been hearing that the river levels got to the highest they've been since the year 2000. One local councillor here in Nottinghamshire described what people have experienced as pure hell. And we've been seeing the pictures of people's homes that have been extensively flooded, as well as businesses along the banks of the River Trent. Across England, it's around 1,000 homes that have had to be evacuated. Here in Nottinghamshire, it's about 100 people or so that have had to be rescued, often in dinghies, often in light boats, often with their pets as well, and their homes and their livelihoods destroyed again, because what we're seeing right now isn't just a once-in-a-century problem, isn't just a once-in-a-century flood. We're seeing floods happen over and over again. Now, why we've been seeing that particularly right now is because, as the Environment Agency says, we've had storm after the last few months, and that has left the ground saturated, meaning that when new rain comes, there's simply nowhere for it to go. And that's why a lot of people have had a lot of problems. There is right now still around 250 flood warnings and 200 or so flood alerts. So there are about 500, 600 warnings right now across the country where people need to be prepared or ready to react in case there is a flood in their local area. Now, we've been hearing a little bit from the politics. Yesterday, we heard from Flood Minister Robbie Moore, who says that they've doubled the amount of funding that they've put in place for flood defences. But there has been criticism for the Prime Minister, saying, where is he when places like this have been flooded? And of course, in an election year, is that a good thing to be doing? Is it good to be in a place that is flooded? Is that where people would expect to see the Prime Minister, or would it be seen as grandstanding on other people's misery? I'll leave that for the politicians to figure out.
Yeah, OK. Will, thanks very much indeed. We've had quite a lot of you getting in touch this morning. Sharon says we're seeing the terrible impact of flooding more frequently because of policies and ideology, and we have to start managing our water. And on that, Bob says we've had our local river dredged a few years ago. It increased its capacity by about 5 feet. Now, that would make a huge difference. But they don't like to dredge anymore. They say it's expensive and say it's bad for the environment, bad for the silt and all that sort of thing, which I get, I understand, but you've got to make a decision somewhere along the line, and the flood defences, for a lot of people at least, just aren't holding.
I mean, I think the Floods Minister is saying that there has been enough money put into flood prevention, but I think the problem is not enough flood resilience measures on people's homes. They're just not protected properly.
Just dredge. Just dredge. 5 feet would... If all the rivers that are flooded, 5 feet may have prevented all of this, or at least a lot of it.
There's a picture in the papers today, I don't know whether you've seen, somebody in... It's a brilliant aerial photograph of somebody, I think it's Worcestershire, being flooded 11 times, and he's built 7-foot-high defences, and all around him is flood, and his one property is as dry as a whistle.
It's worked for him, but I tell you what, how do you sell a house like that? How do you sell a house that it requires that level of flood defences? This is going to be a problem as well, moving down the line when people are trying to sell up. Anyway, let us know your thoughts. gbviews@gbnews.com.
It's a rough day, again, for the Prime Minister, because he's facing yet another by-election. How many is that now? After MP Chris Skidmore announced he's going to resign as soon as possible.
Yeah, he's a former energy minister. He's going to step down when Parliament returns next week because of new legislation for oil and gas drilling, which he says is wrong and will cause future harm.
The government says the planned expansion of new fossil fuels in the North Sea is vital to achieve energy security plans. Meanwhile, it's going to be a very busy year for politicians, as the leaders of the prospective parties have already outlined their messages to voters this week.
My working assumption is we'll have a general election in the second half of this year.
So I promise this: a new mindset, mission government, an understanding at the core of everything we do that it is our job to tackle tomorrow's challenges today.
2024, the year the voters finally get to pack up this awful out-of-touch Conservative government throw their disastrous policies into the skip.
Starmageddon is a risk near you in 2024. Prime Minister, you're not allowed to continue to run the country.
Let's talk to our political correspondent, Catherine Forster, who's here. Morning to you, Catherine. Chris Skidmore, he's not just causing a problem for the Prime Minister, is it? I mean, it seems like he's deliberately giving the party a good kicking before he was due to stand down anyway at the next election.
Yeah, really bad news for Rishi Sunak at the start of this election year. Chris Skidmore was standing down anyway. He was former Energy Minister under Boris Johnson. He led this review into net zero. He currently represents Kingswood in Gloucestershire, has a majority of about 11,000. But he has resigned the Tory whip. He says he wants to leave as soon as possible, meaning by-election number 3 in the next couple of months, along with Wellingborough Peterbone's seat and Blackpool South Scott Benton's seat. And the problem is, apart from the fact that the government have lost pretty much every by-election in the last couple of years, and it doesn't bode well for the general election which is coming, is this seat is going to disappear in boundary changes anyway. So whoever wins, more than likely Labour, they're second last time and they've overturned much bigger majorities than this, is only going to represent those constituents for a few months before the general election, at which point the seat ceases to exist anyway. So a real headache, and I think a lot of people not very happy with
whatever that
Chris
seat
Skidmore
is turning into and the new boundaries, candidates have probably already been selected, have they?
Precisely. So really, an absolute nightmare. I mean, Chris Skidmore himself obviously just feels it's been triggered by Parliament coming back on Monday. There's this offshore petroleum licensing bill. He says he cannot in good conscience vote for it. He says the future will judge harshly those that do. He feels that the government is rowing back on its net zero commitment. Certainly it softens some of these targets. I think worth saying that, in fact, within the G20, the United Kingdom is decarbonising faster than any other country. So we do actually have a very good record, but certainly both the Conservatives and Labour have softened some of these targets. Now, the Conservatives argue much better to use our own oil and gas while we transition. We can't just click our fingers and move to renewables, rather than importing them from the other side of the world. Chris Skidmore feels that we simply shouldn't be doing this, that it sends the wrong message, and he's decided that he can't go on. But a real headache for the government. And Rishi Sunak, announcing an election more than likely in the second half of the year. He's kept his wiggle room, though, hasn't he? But trying to have a good start, and already we've got this. And the floods, he was booed in Stockport yesterday. He's come in for quite a lot of flack for not turning up in some of these flood-affected areas, being seen to do something, although how helpful that would be, I'm not sure.
To be seen supporting people, especially now, we're talking about an election coming up, I think in terms of optics, it would have been quite important to look united instead of sending, your juniors.
I agree.
To do the job.
Being seen to be there, getting some, positive pictures in the media probably wouldn't have done any harm, though how helpful it would be on the ground is another matter. But I think you're right in terms of the optics. So not been the easiest start for him. And of course, when Parliament comes back, we've got the Rwanda bill. There's going to be continual wrangling within the party about that. Some on the left of the party saying don't go any further. Some on the right of the party saying you do need to go further. So problems there even before it gets to the Lords, even before it gets to potentially courts trying to stop it again. So a difficult year, and no wonder really that Rishi Sunak wants to keep his options open about when to go to the polls, although, of course, Labour, the Lib Dems reform would like an election as soon as possible.
Yeah. Catherine? Thanks very much indeed. The Prime Minister for all the tea in China. Now, for a bit more positive news, though, for millions of us across the UK, because the government's reduction of national insurance takes effect today.
But how positive is it? Because announced in the Chancellor's autumn statement, the pre-election cut to national insurance from 12 to 10% will impact around 27 million payroll employees across the UK.
Yeah, this is what the Chancellor had to say.
Today is a very significant day because having turned the corner on inflation, brought it right down, the economy is doing much better, and that means we can start to bring down taxes. Today's cut in national insurance by 2% means that a typical family with 2 earners will be nearly £1,000 better off this year. That is really important in a cost of living crisis where people have been feeling real pressure on family budgets. But also it rewards work. It'll bring more people into the labour force, and that is good for growing the economy.
Chancellor Jeremy Hunt speaking there. Well, some critics have questioned whether the timing of the tax cuts, with an election on the horizon, is just a bid to woo voters.
OK, let's talk to former advisor to the Bank of England, Dr Roger Gewall. Good to see you, Roger, as always. So let me put a point to you from Charles in Wingerworth, Roger, who's been in touch and says, I can't understand the negative reporting of today's NI cut. Surely an extra £450 a year in our pocket is good news. Is it as simple as that?
No, it isn't. I mean, I'm not a cynical person by nature, but this is yet another cynical move by this government, I'm afraid. It was just stated in the earlier piece that the North Sea oil is going to benefit British energy security. Well, no, it's not, because it's all going to be sold on the open international markets, and the profits are going to go to energy companies, not us. You can't believe a word these people say. What's negative about this national insurance cut is that they have not moved the frozen thresholds. So people are being dragged further and further into tax at the same time. One very prestigious think tank pointed out yesterday that for every £2 of tax cuts we're being given, Mr. Hunt and Mr. Sunak are taking £10 more in additional tax. So it's all a sham, really. And it hurts, of course, the lowest earners. People who earn less than $26,000 are the hardest hit. But of course, they were not going to vote for the Tories anyway, were they?
So when you look at everything combined, Roger, as far as you're concerned then, is it a tax increase?
Well, it's not as far as you know, just me is concerned. It's the Institute of Fiscal Studies. It's the Resolution Foundation. It's a list that could probably take the rest of this program to enumerate, have said that the autumn statement was a highly cynical a piece of work designed, as you said, you know, to get votes from the places where the votes are likely, and that the net effect of it, they all say, is actually a massive tax increase to take us to the highest level of taxation since 1948. This government, I'm afraid, has as much credibility as a fox flapping his arms and clucking in a hen house.
All right, so where does this leave us then, Roger? Because we know we're not getting tax cuts in the terms that many of us would like from Rishi Sunak. We're not going to get them from Keir Starmer either, should he get into power. He's already sort of ruled out any tax cuts within the first 2 years. So we're just stuck, aren't we?
We're in a perilous place. I mean, the Lib Dems, there's a program on television this week about the really worst scandal to hit British people in many years, the post office scandal, the scandal involving 700 sub-postmasters and postmistresses, many of whom went to prison, lost their homes, some committed suicide. And Sir Ed Davey, who was the minister responsible for postal affairs at the time, didn't look into it. And if you look at his Wikipedia page, his own page, he admits that he didn't investigate what was going on over almost 20 years. Now, that's because nobody told him. So this guy is going to lead a political party. Oh, excuse me, sir. The NHS waiting list has quadrupled. Well, no one told me. I mean, come on. What happened to the buck stops here? Keir Starmer and the rest of the Labour Party are just sitting, as Boris called them, the human bollards, saying nothing. Why should they? And we don't really know what their policies are. Mr. Kyle, I believe his name is, was on the other day, and he was a lot friendlier and more presentable than Starmer. But I was in a room full of people, and they all turned to each other and said, yeah, he's a lot better. But gosh, he didn't actually say anything, did he? Jordan Peterson, the noted psychologist and political analyst, said that if Labour gets in, Britain will become Venezuela for the next 20 years. So that leaves Reform, who are looking good, but our first past the post system means that no one can displace Labour or the Tories. I mean, it's a very, it's like going to the moon that Reform could actually push them both out. But, a lot of what they're saying is making sense. But the rest of these folks, I mean, we are in a real pickle. And I was speaking with some senior Tories on a very confidential basis, asking questions you have asked me before, which I wasn't able to answer very well. Why in the world would they do this? Why would they, gaslight us, lie to us, tell us they're doing one thing when they're doing another, persistently, constantly do things against our interests as if they don't care about us? Why would they do that? And their answer to me, finally, I can now say to you, is because they can. Because they think the alternative is so horrible that people will still vote for them.
OK, Roger, on that rather depressing note, we've got to leave it there, but good to see you, as always. Thanks very much indeed.
What a mess.
Doesn't give you a lot of hope, does it?
And it might not be resolved until the autumn. Although we're reckoning it's more likely to be May.
I think so, but I could very well be wrong. If I was going to put a little bet on, that's what I'd do.
Well, also a mess is our weather. There are signs, though, that it is getting colder and it is settling down. Let's take a look with Alex Burkill.
Good morning, I'm Alex Burkill here with your latest GB News weather forecast. Whilst it is going to turn much drier than of late through the weekend, it is also much colder too. As a result, some of us have woken up to a touch of frost and there are some patches of fog to watch out for. Through the day, eastern parts will be often quite cloudy, a few outbreaks of rain here, though notice in East Anglia we could see some brightness developing in the afternoon. Sunnier skies further west, a few coastal showers to watch out for. Across the far northeast of Scotland, it could be quite blustery with some showery rain for Orkney and Shetland. Temperatures will be a little bit below average for the time of year, so despite some winter sunshine, it's going to feel quite chilly. As we go through the evening and overnight, the cloud in the east is going to push a little bit further westward, so more central parts turning a bit cloudier for a time, but even so, the cloud's likely to break up at times, so there will be some clear spells around, and further west and northwest, particularly across Scotland and Northern Ireland, quite a lot of clear skies here. So again, it is going to turn quite chilly. There will be some frost around, as well as some fog or freezing fog patches for some. Some of that freezing fog then could linger well through the morning, perhaps even into the afternoon for some places, especially across central southern Scotland and for Northern Ireland too. Otherwise, across England and Wales, it's looking like a largely dry day. You can rule out a few showers, mostly towards the coast, but a good deal of sunshine around. Despite the sunshine, though, again, it is going to feel quite chilly. In fact, temperatures might be a little bit lower tomorrow compared to today, so a real chilly feel to things. Bye-bye.
Yeah, wrap up warm. That's going to be the way forward over the next few days. Look, don't go anywhere. We've got all the sport with Aidan McGee in just a couple of minutes.
GB News is Britain's news channel, and now you can support it. All you have to do is scan that QR code that's up on your screen right now, or you can go to gbnews.com/support and become a GB News member. You'll have fantastic benefits. We're also going to organise special events where you as GB News members can meet the presenters, the on-screen faces. Scan the QR code or go to gbnews.com/support. Thank you so much.
Big news, big debates, big opinion. Patrick Christie's Tonight is the week's biggest show. Every weekday, 9 to 11 p.m, we've got the inside track on the day's top stories. There'll be sharp takes you won't get anywhere else. We will set the news agenda, not just follow it, and I want to bring you along for the ride. Whatever it is, we'll have our finger on the pulse. It's news, but it's this close to entertainment. Patrick Christie's Tonight, 9 to 11 p.m, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Now then, Lee Anderson here. Join me on GB News on my show, The Real World, every Friday at 7 p.m.
I'm not eating bloody cat. Are you
Delicious.
mental?
Open your mouth. OK, here comes a train.
Reminds me of the scene in Singing in the Rain.
Adam, is that a good one?
Whoa! Join me at 7 on GB News, Britain's news channel.
I'm Andrew Doyle.
Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my 2 comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
What you get for breakfast is something that, if we do our jobs right, you will wake up to news that you didn't know the night before.
It's a conversation. It's not just me and Eamon.
We want to get to know you, and we want you to get to know us.
From 6 is Breakfast with Eamon and Isabel.
Monday to Thursdays on GB News,
Britain's news channel.
Wake up to the headlines with Headliners every morning at 5 a.m. We treat you to the day's biggest stories before anyone else, 7 days a week. You can catch up on everything you need to know before you've even had your kippers. Headliners every morning at 5 a.m. only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Every Sunday from 11, join Michael Portillo.
There'll be topical discussion, looking at the week before and the week to come. So kick back and relax at 11 a.m. on Sundays on GB News with me, Michael Portillo. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Michelle Dewberry, and I'm not here to tell you what to think. I'd much rather hear what you have to say. So send in your opinions to gbviews@gbnews.com. Keep them clean, and you never know, I might read them out. With my panel here on Jubes & Co, we debate, we get stuck into the issues of the day on a show where all views are welcome, especially yours. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Have a great Saturday night with me, Leo Curse, on the Saturday Night Showdown. It's a crazy world out there, so come and make fun of it with me, my panel of comedians, and a couple of people who actually know what they're talking about. The Saturday Night Showdown is your front row ticket to the clown show every Saturday, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
All right, it is 8:29 very nearly. Aidan McGee is here with all the very latest sports news. Good morning to you, sir.
Good morning to you. I was at Tottenham last night. Here's the programme. And I saw them beat Burnley by a goal to 0.
You didn't see a thing. You were busy stuffing your face with sirloin steak, weren't you?
I was. We've got some pictures of the food, actually. I dug them out on my phone. We have, indeed. Yeah, we've got this sirloin steak, which I think will come up there.
Oh, look at that. That's very fancy.
Vegetarians will love looking at that picture this morning.
I know. Some bits were sort of more well done than others, which I quite like. There were complaints about the gravy being a bit light.
Cheese board.
Cheese board, yeah, exactly. That's very nice indeed.
Very nice. So is all this free, gratis and for nothing?
For
you?
Yeah. People want my company, Stephen.
Yeah,
people want my insight, my wisdom about football. You know.
Oh, right.
They're not. Sometimes in those lounges, often in those lounges, people aren't necessarily football experts. So it's down to me to colour things in a bit. You know?
Oh, well, there you go.
And on the pitch, it was a great goal by Pedro Porro that won the game for Tottenham.
Say, get colour in, Aidan. Get colour in.
So they're through, and then today we've got a big game up at St James's Park. Sorry, up at the Stadium of Light.
Yeah,
don't
you
get
can't
that wrong.
Yeah, exactly.
No.
Set them all off this
I know.
morning. This is going to be a corker, though.
It is. First time they've met since 2016, and there was the fuss in the week, wasn't there, about how somebody in the corporate department at bit like the sort of place I go into when I go to a football match.
yeah.
I'm going to
Do you
QPR.
ever just go in the stands?
Occasionally, I've got hospitality at QPR Bournemouth this afternoon. That's another FA Cup tie. We'll come to that another time. So some corporate managers or staff at Sunderland decided that they're welcoming some Newcastle fans into one particular box or one particular area of the ground, so they decided to remove all the Sunderland livery and replace it with Newcastle stuff. It was hugely insulting to Sunderland fans. The backlash was absolutely enormous, and the chairman claimed to have known nothing about it. There's reports in the paper today saying he did know something about it, and he said he's quite a young man and he's a little bit naive.
He's 27, isn't he?
I know, yeah, exactly. It's quite a young age to be running a club like that. But as I say, on the pitch, I think Newcastle have got everything to lose here, actually, because they've got injuries. The manager will be under pressure if they go out of that competition against a team in the division below. Sunderland have a notoriously good record against Newcastle as well, although, as Pip said, they haven't played since 2016. But that's one of the standout ties of the round. I would suggest 12:45 for that one. And we've got some non-league clubs in action as well today, as you mentioned.
Yes, because you need our giant killers, don't we?
Absolutely, yeah. Giant killers. I haven't heard that for quite a while, actually. But there's no many, because it doesn't happen much anymore. But we've got the manager of Aldershot, his son, that's Tommy Widrington. His son is in Strictly, one of the dancers, Kai Widrington. So that's the kind of romance side of it. And as we touched on earlier on, there's a battle to keep the nostalgia of the FA Cup going, because with the commercialisation of the sport and the Premier League and the might of the Premier League, it is being smothered.
And do the Premier League teams tend to field their second teams, rather than their...
They do. They don't. There was a time when Arsene Wenger was at Arsenal. He didn't understand what's this cup competition about. It's all about the league. They didn't take it seriously in the countries he'd worked in. So he put 11 second-string players in, and they'd probably still beat a team in the lower division, but then it got frowned upon. It wasn't really de rigueur within the Premier League and within the FA Cup and other competitions. And so,
de rigueur.
I've been waiting to use that.
Getting fancy into his fancy.
Well, it might be something. There was some italics, French words in italics on the menu last night. Funny.
Was there? That would throw me.
But no, with the changes, it's not very well thought of in football. It's a bit disrespectful to the lower league side. So what they tend to do is maybe make 2 or 3 changes. But as I said to you earlier on, the prize money for winning the FA Cup is something like £5 million. I mean, that's worth a point. That's about a point in the Premier League.
But to a smaller club.
Exactly.
Massive.
Yeah, exactly. You go to Maidstone, you go to Basingstoke, you go to Aldershot, whatever. You speak to these. I mean, I covered Canvey Island against Southend United in 2003. We called it the White Stiletto Derby.
Canvey Island, I know they had their own club.
Yeah, they have, and they got beaten. But yeah, I've been all around the country watching all these clubs, and to say to them that the FA Cup doesn't mean anything is quite insulting, actually.
Yeah. Have we got to, just very quickly.
Yeah.
Very quickly, because I'm getting told off because we're tight for time. Rory McIlroy.
Yeah.
He was very anti-live golf.
Yeah.
It's changed his tune. Has it got anything to do with any large cheques being waved?
Possibly. I don't know if it's a cheque. That's a bit old-fashioned, Stephen. If someone hurtling towards 50, but yeah. I mean, he said in this. He's been saying for the last 2 years, 18 months, whatever it is, that he's against live golf and it will be the ruination of the sport. And then John Rahm, his good friend and Ryder Cup colleague, goes to live, and suddenly he changes his tune. And he understands as well, I think, the commercialisation of the situation, because they're going to merge. The DP Tour and Live is going to merge. We have to accept that Saudi money is infiltrating all areas of sport. Sport is business at the end of the day. And the chief exec of Live Golf, Greg Norman, himself, a celebrated player back in the day, has said that it could mark a turning point. You don't want your top players frowning on it.
Are there signs that it's ruining golf?
Not so. Well, it's creating division. So it started off, Pip, with senior players who've probably seen better days, who were thinking, wow, this is a hell of a payday at my age. I better go there and do it. And so from there, it looked like a seniors tour. But then when John Rahm goes, he's just been a key player in winning the Ryder Cup.
Yeah, wasn't he given 400 million?
Yes, of course he was. Yeah, it's all money. It is all money. So eventually that tips it.
Eye-watering.
That'd change my mind if he was his good friend and confidant.
It would change my life, actually, as well. But only a little bit, though.
400 million quid, that's just for turning up. Never mind winning.
That's a season worth of hospitality passes at Tottenham.
You party boy. Aidan, thanks very much.
Good to see you both this morning.
Coming up, we're going to talk to the chair of the Labour Party, Annalise Dodds, as that general election campaigning, quite frankly, gets underway. See you in a minute.
Join us every night on GB News at 11 p.m. for Headliners, which is 3 top comedians going through the next day's news stories, which is exactly what you need, because when the establishment has gone crazy, you need some craziness to make sense of it.
Headliners. You don't have to bother reading the newspaper. We've got it covered for you. Every night at 11 p.m. and repeated every morning at 5 a.m. We won't send you to sleep like some of the other paper review shows out there.
So join us 11 p.m. every night on GB News.
The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I think the most exciting bit for me is talking to people.
People who I think are ignored often by the major news channels. We're going to give news they want to hear. There's a voice there that needs to be heard. I think there's a chance here for a diversity of opinion to be expressed, which you don't find elsewhere. It's really exciting.
We don't hold back. We're free to say how decisions that are taken here
affect us all around the country. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Michelle Dewberry, and I'm not here to tell you what to think. I'd much rather hear what you have to say. So send in your opinions to gbviews@gbnews.com. Keep them clean, and you never know, I might read them out. With my panel here on Jubes & Co, we debate, we get stuck into the issues of the day on a show where all views are welcome, especially yours. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
In the GB Newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens. With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK, we're ready to give you accurate reporting every day. When the news breaks, we'll be there with bulletins on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Your weekend starts here with Friday Night Live with me, Mark Dolan, 8 till 9 on GB News. Big stories, big guests and big laughs as we get you ready for a cracking weekend. That's Friday Night Live with Mark Dolan. Fridays 8 till 9 on GB News. Bring your own drinks. The admission's free.
Good afternoon, Britain.
Good afternoon, Britain. Join us, Tom and Emily,
To find out what's happening in the heart of Westminster.
and why it matters to you.
Weekdays from midday, we bring you the most compelling stories from across the United Kingdom.
And from your doorstep to our inbox.
That's right, we want to hear from you.
GB News,
Britain's news channel.
Big news, big debates, big opinion. Patrick Christie's Tonight is the week's biggest show. Every weekday, 9 to 11 p.m, we've got the inside track on the day's top stories. There'll be sharp takes you won't get anywhere else. We will set the news agenda, not just follow it, and I want to bring you along for the ride. Whatever it is, we'll have our finger on the pulse. It's news, but it's this close to entertainment. Patrick Christie's Tonight, 9 to 11 p.m, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
GB News is Britain's news channel, and now you can support it. All you have to do is scan that QR code that's up on your screen right now, or you can go to gbnews.com/support and become a GB News member. You'll have fantastic benefits. We're also going to organise special events where you as GB News members can meet the presenters, the on-screen faces. Scan the QR code or go to gbnews.com/support. Thank you so much.
Welcome back. You are watching and listening to Breakfast with Stephen Dixon and Pip Thompson. Now, the latest figures have shown that up to 1.6 million homeowners will face a mortgage hike of almost £3,000 this year. Labour's accused the government of not doing enough to help households.
Let's talk to the chair of the Labour Party, Annalise Dodds, who joins us now. Good morning to you. Right, so you say the government isn't doing enough. This is all down to interest rates and things. What would you want the government to do?
Good morning and Happy New Year to you as well. Well, we really do want the government to be taking action here. We've seen, unfortunately, a huge cost of living crisis in our country. And of course, this is just one aspect of it. As you say, 1.6 million homeowners who are going to be facing an average of £2,880 more on their mortgages when they remortgage. Now, of course, some of that damage, unfortunately, is already done. You know, a large amount of it, sadly for many people, is down to what happened with that Liz Truss crashing of the economy. We immediately saw that feeding in to people's mortgage costs, unfortunately. But we really do want to see the government now doing all that it can to try and get people's costs down, you know, whether it's the cost of housing and mortgages or indeed the cost of other bills, including energy. So, for example, one of the big factors that remains around mortgage costs at the moment is the lack of supply of housing. Labour's announced radical plans to make sure the planning system is actually working so that we can get those new homes built. We'd also be acting to secure our economy because economic instability has been a big part of the reason for those really big interest rate hikes. So we've set out our fiscal rules very early as an opposition party to do all we can to try and provide that economic stability. We won't ever again have that kind of chaos as we saw under Liz Truss, but we'd be acting on other areas as well. You know, we know, for example, if we were insulating homes, if we were making sure that we had homegrown renewables and new nuclear delivered in our country, then we would be getting people's energy bills down as well. Unfortunately, the government's doing the opposite and keeping them artificially high.
Forgive me for interrupting, but isn't the problem here that you're in election campaign mode, you're highlighting a short-term, immediate problem and a very real problem that a lot of households are facing with remortgaging, but what you're offering as a solution is actually very long-term. So what you're effectively saying is that if Labour comes to power at some point this year, for those people who are struggling to pay their mortgages every month, you've got no solution for them.
Well, you're right to the extent that it will take time to turn our economy around. Labour's been really upfront about that. I think we've seen so much sticking plaster politics, announcements made one day to be pretty much forgotten the next, not actually improving the situation in the long term for people. But re-establishing economic stability would have a really significant impact, and one which could be delivered really quite quickly. I mean, of course, we've seen the reverse. We've seen economic instability having a very speedy negative impact on people's mortgage rates. But you're right that we do need to have a long-term approach, and we need to be upfront about that. And Labour has been clear on that. That's why we set out missions for government. And our mission, for example, to have our country growing the quickest out of the G7, we're really clear that's not going to be changed overnight. It is going to take time, and we're really upfront and open about that.
OK, but, I mean, predictably, you are putting a negative spin on the mortgages, because actually the average rate on a 2-year fixed mortgage has fallen to its lowest level now for nearly 7 months. So things are going in the right direction.
Well, that, of course, is in a context where it's been really challenging within that period, and in a way that wasn't necessary. A lot of this, as I said, was due to that Liz Truss crashing of the economy under the Conservatives. But actually, if you look over the last few years, certainly since 2010, what we've seen is a bigger shift, a shift away from home ownership being within people's grasp to it being out of people's grasp. And we've seen the age at which people, on average, are able to start getting on that housing ladder go up and up and up. So this isn't something that, in terms of its impact, has just happened overnight. We have seen overall the problems in housing building, and Labour's really clear. We've got to get a grip on this. Labour will back the builders. We won't back the blockers. We think there does need to be more genuinely affordable homes in properly planned communities with the facilities there that people need. And we set out those plans early, before a general election, so that we can provide as much clarity as possible around them.
But how can people believe what you say? I mean, the Labour Party is trying to set itself out as the economic powerhouse party, the ones we can trust, the ones who've got everything mapped out, everything costed. Keir Starmer said in his big speech the other day, it's not about tax cuts because we can't do those for a couple of years. It's all about growth, and we're going to pull the lever of growth, which is hugely important for this country. But that's dependent on your £28 billion green energy plan, which he said in an interview only yesterday is now nothing more than a confident ambition.
But that's because we've been absolutely crystal clear that we will not be moving away from our fiscal rules. So they're those rules around, for example, getting debt falling in relation to GDP, so in relation to economic output. Those rules that Rachel Reeves set out many, many months ago. And we did that a long time ago because we were determined to provide that stability. Now, opposition parties don't tend to do that. They don't tend to be clear about those issues so early. But we've seen the kind of economic chaos that's been such a big problem for our country, that's really hitting people in their pockets right now, as we've been talking about when it comes to people having to remortgage at the moment. And we're really determined we won't have that chaos if Labour's given the chance to serve after the next general election. And, quite frankly, I think for many people who are watching this right now, they know the situation that our country's in. They know that we've had much lower growth under Conservative-led governments over the last few years than the kind of average growth that we saw between 1997 and 2010. They see that difference. They also see that our public services are on their knees, and there are very few things in our country that are working better now than they were when Labour left office. I'm not saying everything was perfect, but I think people watching this will recognise that difference. That's why our country needs a change. We do need to see that general election now so that people have that chance to support a change.
Well, many people will remember back in 2010 there was the note that your party left saying there was no money left. So the Tory party didn't inherit the best situation, did they?
well, actually, the Conservative Party inherited an economy that was growing. If you compare the situation in 2010 as well with that now, we've got far higher interest rates. Now we have public services that are on their knees. We have debt that's significantly higher as a country as well. As I said, no government is perfect, but I think for many people considering in particular whether their family's finances are better now in a healthier state than they were previously between 97 and 2010, their experience speaks for itself and the statistics speak for themselves as well. You know, obviously I, as Shadow Secretary of State for Women and Equalities, particularly focus on women's economic situation. You know, the average woman is hundreds of pounds worse off now in real terms than she was back in 2010 at the same age. That is a big problem for our country, and we've not seen that kind of slide in living standards take place in many other similar countries to our own. That is because of Conservative economic mismanagement.
Annalise Dodds, good to talk to you this morning. We'll do it again very soon, no doubt. Thank you very much indeed. Time for Headline Makers this morning with Stephanie Tecci and Susan Holder. Good to see you both once again. Susan, what did you make of what Annalise Dodds had to say?
It's a difficult one, isn't it? I mean, I think I was waiting for someone to say exactly what you said, which is about the note that was left with where you know, there's no money left once Labour had vacated the premises after Gordon Brown, who was, you know, had been a chancellor. You can never trust the Labour Party on money, unfortunately, and that's been shown across the country at the moment with the way the councils are all going bankrupt. I just think what she's saying is good intention. It needs more detail, and if they are going to bring out that plan of how they're going to do certain things before the election, that's a good thing. I look forward to looking into the detail of that.
Yeah, do you want more details, Steph?
Yes, definitely, because, you know, I've always, I don't know if I can say this, like, I've always wanted to see how a Labour government will look like, but now that it's actually seeming like it's going to become a reality, I'm like, actually, what do they stand for? What is the policies that will be coming into the government and that will affect our lives? And sometimes I think, is it better the devil, you know, which is the Conservatives? So it's...
What, even after 14 years?
Oh, God, yeah, maybe. Still...
It's very difficult to know with all of this.
We all want to change, but the change, it's not clear what change is on offer.
Yeah.
That's the problem I think we've got.
And Labour should earn the chance to be in power, not just be there by default.
That's a good point.
And that's what it feels like.
Yeah, it does feel, yeah.
That's what it feels like. I just feel like...
You're voting people out, you're not voting people in.
Was ever thought. It's always the way. OK, let's see. Just a couple of stories from the papers this morning, little different ones, I think. The Mail, Susan. Electric car sales going down.
Apparently, it's gone into reverse to... I've got it somewhere. Here it is. It's because you've messed up the order, so I don't know where it was. He's gone from there's a list and he's gone to the bottom just to fox me, but I've found it. Yeah, electric sales for private buyers have gone into reverse. They now make up only a quarter of purchases.
I'm surprised it's as high as a quarter.
Yeah, I am actually. Businesses upgrading their fleets make up the remainder. But as someone who I can see the benefit, I can kind of get on board with the thinking behind electric cars, and I like to drive. I drive a lot. I drive all over the country. I'm not convinced about the whole electric car thing. I don't understand how it would work. I don't understand where I would charge. I don't understand what would happen if I was on a long journey and I couldn't get there. I don't understand what would happen if I was stuck in traffic.
I think a lot of people are convinced by the electric car. What they're not convinced by, Stephanie, is the infrastructure being good enough.
I feel like a bit like a deer in headlights when I think about electric cars, because I know it's the future, but I think there's still a lot of like education that needs to go about how it works for drivers and stuff like that. And I think people like using what they know, you know, rather than moving to something else.
And I do wonder as well, you do also read headlines sometimes about the fact that, yes, it makes sense in some ways, electric rather than using oil-based fuel, but then the actual manufacture of the electric cars when you weigh it all up in the contribution to the
yes, there is a
problems
debate about
of
battery production and all that sort of thing. Well, but it's got to be ironed out one way or another. I'd love an electric car. I like the idea of a clean, fancy car like that, but it's range.
You would, yeah, but I was going to say, if
anxiety.
it petered out halfway to work in the morning, you wouldn't like it quite so much then.
I went up to the Lake District with some friends the other week in my friend's electric car. Lovely car, but we had to stop to recharge.
Ooh.
And we were at a motorway services near Manchester, and we were stuck there for 2 hours.
Oh, no
there was
way.
only three charging points, I think it was, and they were slow. And honestly, I was just triggered by this app where you're just watching it tick up slowly. 60%, 61%, 62%, 63%.
No.
It killed me.
It's one of those improvements that doesn't make things any better, is it? For the consumer, anyway.
For the consumer, yeah. Well, we've got
That's what's most important here.
The thing is, it will improve.
Yeah.
So all these technologies will improve. Just got to hang on a little bit. Now, years and years ago, when I was a student in Nottingham, I went onto the set of Bullseye.
With Jim Bowen.
With Jim Bowen. Jim wasn't there at the time. I just snuck in. It was in Carlton Lane.
Lenton
Lane.
Yeah.
Yes.
Lenton Lane. In Nottingham. Bloody brilliant it was. This is where they did Supermarket Sweep.
Oh, my gosh, I loved it.
But anyway, Bullseye's coming back. It's not what we're saying without Jim.
No, of course not. But we might have Paddy McGuinness instead, which is on par a little bit. But, you know, this week we've all been a bit darts mad, thanks to Luke Littler. And apparently ITV bosses are in talks to bring back Bullseye. And hopefully, the last time it was on our screens was almost 14 years.
It used to be on a Sunday tea time when I was growing up.
Right.
On, it was Carlton. Yeah, Carlton Television then. Yeah. And I used to go around my grandparents and we'd watch it while we were having tea. And it was always, what was it? Out of the black and into the red. Nothing in this game for two in the bed. You can't beat a bit of bully.
I'd love to hear from somebody who won the speedboat, wouldn't you?
Yeah, that was always the thing.
I'd love to know if anyone out there has still got the speedboat and whether they were landlocked but they took the prize anyway. They are talking about bringing this bit. That was the best bit, wasn't it?
That was the best bit because it's always...
somebody's face who won a speedboat.
It was a speedboat or a caravan.
Brilliant. But are there no new ideas in television? It would appear there's not. Deal or No Deal's back.
You say that, though, but isn't it the sense that we want that nostalgia?
No, I'm not saying that's a bad thing. If it's right and it works and we love it. I was just trying to think of the shows that I would like to see back.
Generation Game.
Well, anything with Bruce Forsyth always worked, but was it Bruce that made it work? I always liked Celebrity Squares with Bob Monkhouse, but nowadays I wouldn't know any of the celebrities because they'd all be Love Island people.
Well, they did a
know.
Celebrity Squares. Did
they do it?
They've redone that, and they redid Blankety Blank.
They did, and they brought back Deal or No Deal. Wheel of Fortune's coming back.
Is it? But the Blankety Blank didn't work. I don't know who hosted it now, but it just didn't work.
Well, that's Graham Norton's going to be doing the new Wheel of Fortune. I've seen adverts for that just this week.
Well, that's the thing. I wonder when they do bring back these shows whether they will enjoy the same longevity as they did the first time round. And I don't think there's quite a chop and change TV industry at the moment, which is a shame for classic shows.
They shouldn't bring back 3, 2, 1. Remember that 3, 2, 1?
Dusty Bin.
You never understood the clues.
I never understood anything about Dusty Bin.
It was all gobbledygook, and nobody ever understood it. I don't really miss that.
What a trip down memory lane this is.
Isn't it?
Loving it.
Thanks both. Been good to see you this morning. Let's have a look at the weather.
A brighter outlook with Box Solar, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Good morning, I'm Alex Burkill here with your latest GB News weather forecast. Whilst it is going to turn much drier than of late through the weekend, it is also much colder too. As a result, some of us have woken up to a touch of frost and there are some patches of fog to watch out for. Through the day, eastern parts will be often quite cloudy, a few outbreaks of rain here, though notice in East Anglia we could see some brightness developing in the afternoon. Sunnier skies further west, a few coastal showers to watch out for. Across the far northeast of Scotland, it could be quite blustery with some showery rain for Orkney and Shetland. Temperatures will be a little bit below average for the time of year, so despite some winter sunshine, it's going to feel quite chilly. As we go through the evening and overnight, the cloud in the east is going to push a little bit further westward, so more central parts turning a bit cloudier for a time, but even so, the cloud's likely to break up at times, so there will be some clear spells around, and further west and northwest, particularly across Scotland and Northern Ireland, quite a lot of clear skies here. So again, it is going to turn quite chilly. There will be some frost around, as well as some fog or freezing fog patches for some. Some of that freezing fog then could linger well through the morning, perhaps even into the afternoon for some places, especially across central central southern Scotland and for Northern Ireland too. Otherwise, across England and Wales, it's looking like a largely dry day. You couldn't rule out a few showers, mostly towards the coast, but a good deal of sunshine around. Despite the sunshine, though, again, it is going to feel quite chilly. In fact, temperatures might be a little bit lower tomorrow compared to today, so a real chilly feel to things. Bye-bye.
A brighter outlook with Box Solar, sponsors of weather on GB News.
(2024), a battleground year.
The year the nation decides.
As the parties gear up their campaigns for the next general election.
Who will be left standing when the British people make one of the biggest decisions of their lives?
Who will rise?
And who will fall? Let's find out together.
For every moment, the highs, the lows, the twists and turns.
We'll be with you for every step of this journey.
In 2024, GB News is Britain's election channel.
GB News, unlike other broadcasters, isn't obsessed with the London-Westminster bubble. We think there's a nation beyond the M25, and that's why we talk about the issues that matter across the land. Join me on State of the Nation, 8 to 9 o'clock, Monday to Thursday, on GB News. Daisy's listening, and you should too.
Wake up to the headlines with Headliners every morning at 5 a.m. We treat you to the day's biggest stories before anyone else, 7 days a week. You can catch up on everything you need to know before you've even had your kippers. Headliners every morning at 5 a.m, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my 2 comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Now then, Lee Anderson here. Join me on GB News on my show, The Real World, every Friday at 7 p.m.
I'm not eating bloody cat. Are you
Delicious.
mental?
Open your mouth. OK, here comes a train.
Reminds me of the scene in Singing in the Rain.
Adam, is that a good one?
Whoa! Join me at 7 on GB News, Britain's news channel.
What you get for breakfast is something that, if we do our jobs right, you will wake up to news that you didn't know the night before.
It's a conversation. It's not just me and Eamon.
We want to get to know you, and we want you to get to know us.
From 6, it's Breakfast with Eamon and Isabel.
Monday to Thursdays on GB News,
Britain's news channel.
Have a great Saturday night with me, Leo Curse, on the Saturday Night Showdown. It's a crazy world out there, so come and make fun of it with me, my panel of comedians, and a couple of people who actually know what they're talking about. The Saturday Night Showdown is your front row ticket to the clown show every Saturday, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Good afternoon, Britain.
Good afternoon, Britain. Join us, Tom and Emily,
To find out what's happening in the heart of Westminster.
and why it matters to you.
Weekdays from midday, we bring you the most compelling stories from across the United Kingdom.
And from your doorstep to our inbox,
That's right, we want to hear from you.
GB News,
Britain's news channel.
Every Sunday from 11, join Michael Portillo.
There'll be topical discussion, looking at the week before and the week to come. So kick back and relax at 11 a.m. on Sundays on GB News with me, Michael Portillo. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
When the news happens, it happens here.
And really important breaking news.
Breaking news this morning.
On TV, radio and online, the news starts here on Britain's Newsroom.
All the biggest stories and the answers that you need from across the UK and beyond.
Join Britain's Newsroom from 9:30 on GB News.
The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Good morning to you. It's 9 o'clock on Saturday, the 6th of January. Today, after a week of wild weather battering Britain, Labour have accused the Prime Minister of being asleep at the wheel as thousands of Brits face flood damage.
There's more bad news for the Prime Minister with another by-election on the way as former Energy Minister Chris Skidmore says he's resigning. Catherine Forster has the latest for us this morning.
Yes, an by-election coming up now in Kingswood in Gloucestershire, making it 3 that Rishi Sunak is going to face in the next few months. And of course, a general election later in the year. There's going to be a lot of politics around.
bit more politics in our pocket today because a New Year's gift from the Chancellor, cuts to national insurance, come into force today in a bid, some would say, to boost the Tories' electoral chances.
Now we've turned a corner, brought down inflation, the economy's doing better, we want to bring down the tax burden, and this 2% cut will make a very big difference to many families up and down the country.
We're talking to one of the country's most hardcore swimmers, and she's the sister of Bear Grylls, Lara Fawcett, as we take a look at the crazy world of ice swimming champions.
Oh, can you imagine? It's Sunshine Saturday today, believe it or not, the busiest day of the year for holiday bookings. So are you planning on booking your next summer trip today? Let us know.
Also, Andrew Eborn will be joining us to chat through fake or fact, and we're looking ahead to New Year's resolutions.
Or looking back to them, I should say.
Well, some of us haven't done any, like me.
Probably all gone by now. Also, of course, checking on your weather today. We might be calling it Sunshine Saturday. I don't know if we're going to get much actual sunshine today. Let's get the details from Alex.
I think most of us are hoping for something a little bit drier, and the good news is that is going to come this weekend. But it's also going to turn colder. I'll have the details shortly.
Good morning to you. I'm Stephen Dixon.
Good morning, I'm Pip Thompson, and this is Breakfast on GB News.
I have had the fright of my life this morning because I popped out in the commercial break. And I headed round to our little makeup department because coming up at 10 o'clock, it's Saturday morning with Ellie Costello and Peter Andre. And I just popped round to say hello to Ellie. Big roller, she looks like something out the 60s. Stood there, bent over an ironing board, ironing her jacket. Honestly,
she got clothes on?
Oh, yeah, she had clothes on, yeah. She had her travelling outfit on. So she's there, sort of, honestly, all she needed was a fag hanging out the side of her mouth, and she would have been like something out the 1960s. What a sight.
You have no idea all the work that goes into getting us camera ready in the morning.
Honestly, it's hard work, so we have to get up
really
at midnight. But there you go. But Ellie will be looking glamorous and fabulous by 10 o'clock this morning. But what a sight. Apparently Peter's off having a shower, sorting his hair out.
As you do.
So there you go. It's a weird and wonderful world here.
But it's all being done for you.
Yes,
for you to enjoy at 10 o'clock.
So it'll be worth tuning in for this morning, if only to see what they look like. And it's better than going out, because what a miserable time it's been. It's been a proper brutal winter, actually. And for those of us who've been really struggling with storms and flooding, there's potentially some heavy snow on the way as well.
A cold weather alert has been issued by the UK Health Security Agency. It just come into force, actually, in the last few minutes. Temperatures are set to plummet over the coming days.
Well, as you'll know, over the last few days, hundreds of homes have been devastated by flooding, following a number of powerful storms, actually, and a week of really heavy rainfall.
There are still more than 250 flood warnings in force. At their height, there was over 600, so there are fewer now, but still 250, most of which are in the Midlands, East Anglia and southern England. Residents forced there to leave their properties.
So, of course, as a result of all of this, it's getting political. The Labour Party accusing the Prime Minister today of being asleep at the wheel over the flood response. They're demanding the government convenes a Cobra-style task force to protect homes from further damage.
Joining us now is our East Midlands reporter, Will Hollis. Good morning to you, Will. You are in Nottinghamshire for us this morning. Any signs that those high water levels are starting to recede, even just a little?
Yes, well, the good news is that here in Newark-on-Trent, overnight, this part here on Tolney Lane, the water levels have started to come down. But if you can see in the background, in the far distance, that's where the River Trent is. But this massive expanse in front of us, that should usually be a park, and it's hard to know where the River Trent begins and where it ends, because it has burst its banks completely and it's spilling onto the road here. I'm on a very little bit of dry land, but you can see on the road as we go down, this section of Newark-on-Trent is completely cut off, and there's cars that have been coming up and down, cars that can get up and down this road here in 4x4s, like the gentleman that's just going down now, who is towing people that are stuck right now at a caravan park, back to safety, back to their vehicles, which they managed to get off of site earlier last night. There has been a major incident declared here in Nottinghamshire. Hundreds of people that have been evacuated from their homes, about 1,000 across England altogether. And as you said there a moment ago, much of it here in the Midlands where there is still very high water levels. If you look down the street now that it's safe for us to walk down it, you can see that there is flood water still being pumped out in the distance where there is those what appear to be bins. They might be flood barriers. We've heard that Newark District Council, which is the local council for this area, are going to be coming down shortly with boats, with tractors as well, to see if they can do anything for the cut-off community here at Tolney Lane. But there are lots of villages and lots of small towns along the River Trent that have been badly affected. One of the Nottinghamshire councillors here described it as pure hell, and I think there's probably no better phrase for describing what happens here when you flood. But the people that I've been speaking to, I'm just going to get out of the road because a car is trying to come down. Whether they've actually decided not to come down because it seems to be quite a low level VW there, I don't think they're going to be able to get through the water levels. For a lot of people, there are still really big concerns about the flooding. A lot of people are still in limbo at the moment, as you often are overnight, whether they've gone to respite centres, which have been set up in the small towns and villages here along the River Trent, or if they've gone to stay with family and friends, or they're in hotels, and they're going to be coming back this morning to see what kind of devastation is in place. What we haven't seen is the Prime Minister at any of these flooded locations. As you said, he has been criticised for that by Labour. We can go a little bit further in now. He has been criticised, but if you were the Prime Minister in a political year, in a general election year, would this be the kind of place where you would want to go to show support for communities that have been flooded time and time again, but from what local people say, not to this extent? Or would it be seen as grandstanding on other people's misery?
Yeah, it's a very good question, that, Will, and I think it's a very difficult one to call. Thanks very much indeed. I also think he'd get a lot of stick from people saying, you know, the government isn't doing enough, or the Environment Agency isn't doing enough. So he would get a lot of stick as well. But should he be there or not?
Does it not show a bit of strength to talk to people and have those conversations? I think Boris Johnson went and visited people.
It's always
to show when the floods happened there a few years ago.
David Cameron went up to Cockermouth and things in the lakes when all that happened. But do you really want them there, or is it just a pain in the neck when you're trying to sort your life out in the midst of all of that? Let us know. gbviews@gbnews.com.
A testing day in store for the Prime Minister because he's facing another by-election after MP Chris Skidmore announced he's going to resign as soon as possible.
Yeah, the former Energy Minister was going to stand down anyway at the time of the next election, but now he says he's going to do it as soon as he possibly can because of new legislation for oil and gas drilling, which he says is wrong and will cause future harm.
The government says the planned expansion of new fossil fuels in the North Sea is vital to achieve energy security plans. Meanwhile, it's going to be a very busy year for politicians as the leaders of all the prospective parties have already outlined their messages to voters this week.
My working assumption is we'll have a general election in the second half of this year.
So I promise this, a new mindset, mission government, an understanding at the core of everything we do, that it is our job to tackle tomorrow's challenges today.
2024, the year the voters finally get to pack up this awful, out-of-touch Conservative government, throw their disastrous policies into the skip.
Starmageddon is a risk near you in 2024. Prime Minister, you're not allowed to continue to run the country.
Well, let's talk to our political correspondent, Catherine Forster, who's raring to go this election year. Heck, you're going to be busy. We're all going to be busy, aren't we? The big question here, and I tie it in with Skidmore and you know, the fact there's going to be another by-election, all the rest of it, is are people just going to get fed up with this?
You would wonder, wouldn't you? I mean, we've had a lot of political drama over the last few years, haven't we? Especially within the Conservative Party, the ruling party. They've gone through 3 prime ministers. Who would have thought when Boris Johnson got that 80-seat majority that they'd boot him out, somebody else would come in, be gone after 7 weeks, and here we are with Rishi Sunak. So certainly there's a lot of voter dissatisfaction with the government, but even though Labour are riding high in the polls, not necessarily that much love for Labour either. Basically, people are fed up with the Conservatives, and Labour look likely to win off the back of it. But lots of questions about what they would do and lots of difficult choices, assuming they do get in, because there's not much money around and it's going to be hard for anybody.
Here's one for you then. There's a detail... manifestos are published when a general election is announced, and so people know exactly what they stand for. They don't release a lot of details beforehand. Do we think Labour's keeping their powder dry, or do they not know how to solve these issues at this stage?
Well, they are planning for a May election, so I expect that they actually do know a lot, but they're not going to want to reveal it ahead of time. I mean, they've come in for a lot of criticism, haven't they, for not being clear about what they would do, and the scrutiny on them is going to go up and up and up this year. But despite the fact that Rishi Sunak has said, working assumption, general election, late half of the year, he could change his mind. He could go for May. Personally, I think it's unlikely. I know you disagree, Stephen.
Emily Thornberry said it was the worst kept secret about being a May election.
Yeah, well, there was speculation, but why on earth would Rishi Sunak go to the polls when they are 20 points behind? I just don't get it. But so Labour are making sure that they are ready, whatever. But what they don't want to do is announce in detail the plans now, because they're worried that the Conservatives will sort of set elephant traps for them. And also in terms of, like, tax cuts, they've not committed to tax cuts. They've said they want to get the burden down on working people, but it depends on growth, etc. It's likely that the Conservatives are going to announce more tax cuts. We've got the national insurance cap coming in today. But Jeremy Hunt, the Chancellor's budget, March the 6th, he's saying he doesn't know if he's going to be able to cut taxes more. I suspect they will find some money from somewhere, because they've got to have a positive offering, haven't they? They've got to give the electorate some reason to vote for them, because let's face it, the economy is not in a great state at the moment. So
let's just touch on as well this looming by-election, which has now put another by-election, which has put the Tories in an even deeper hole. This is Chris Skidmore that says he's quitting. Jeremy Hunt's actually been speaking this morning and saying he profoundly disagrees with what Chris Skidmore says about these new domestic oil and gas licences, and they are needed for energy security.
Yes, the government's argument is we can't get to net zero just like that. We have to use oil and gas in the meantime. Much better to use our own. It's here, we've got it, it's our resource. Let's use it, let's capitalise on that while we transition. Much better that than importing it from the other side of the world. Chris Skidmore passionately disagrees. He's resigned the whip. There's going to be a by-election as soon as possible, because he was Energy Minister under Boris Johnson. He did a big net zero review. He says the future will judge harshly those that vote for this legislation coming to Parliament on Monday, basically increasing the amount of oil and gas being taken out of the North Sea. But, of course, bad news for the government. That's 3 by-elections they're now going to be facing, probably going to lose in the next 2 or 3 months. And this seat particularly, Chris Skidmore was going to go anyway, and also this particular seat, which is Kingswood in Gloucestershire, is going to disappear at the next election because there's boundary changes. So whoever gets it now is only going to have it for a few months, and then it's going to vanish. So really, really not how Rishi Sunak would want to start off this year.
I just can't, but I just keep thinking about that lady. Do you remember it was Theresa May called the election?
Brenda from Bristol.
Was that Brenda from Bristol?
Oh,
no, not
another one.
I know.
And she said, I can't be doing with this. There's too much politicking going on.
Honestly,
and
I think she's Brenda from Bristol might be having another go now.
Speaks for the nation, I suspect.
Les in Newcastle responding to Annalise Dodds, because when we had obviously Annalise Dodds from the Labour Party on, so people get in touch responding to that. He said, I wouldn't trust Labour to run a bath. But would you trust the Tories?
Yeah.
This is it.
Well.
Because we've not had a government round on, as we call it, then you haven't been able to respond to that. We are going to hear a lot more from opposition parties than we are from the government over the next few months.
Jason, good morning. You say, are we really expected to believe her party can run the country when they can't even run a council without it going bankrupt? Well, we should say, and this was something Suzanne said as well earlier, but there are also Tory councils that have gone bankrupt as well, so it's not just Labour ones. We have to be clear about that.
And Martin in Southampton says, why is everyone forgetting the cost of the pandemic? That had an effect on the economy that Labour conveniently forgets. Yeah, maybe so. But anyway, keep your thoughts coming through. gbviews@gbnews.com. If you want cheering up a little bit, well, this is meant to be positive news for millions of us across the UK because the government's reduction of national insurance kicks in today.
Announced in the Chancellor's autumn statement, the pre-election cut to national insurance from 12 to 10% will affect around 27 million payroll employees across the UK.
So this is what the Chancellor had to say.
Today is a very significant day because having turned the corner on inflation, brought it right down, the economy is doing much better, and that means we can start to bring down taxes. Today's cut in national insurance by 2% means that a typical family with 2 earners will be nearly £1,000 better off this year. That is really important in a cost of living crisis where people have been feeling real pressure on family budgets. But also it rewards work. It'll bring more people into the labour force, and that is good for growing the economy.
Well, that was the Chancellor speaking, but some critics have questioned whether the timing of the tax cuts, with an election on the horizon, is just a bid to woo voters. And actually, is it really a giveaway? Not so sure.
Well, let's talk to personal finance and consumer affairs commentator Georgie Frost. Good morning to you.
Good morning to you both.
Should we be excited by this or not?
Well, I mean, I wouldn't go as far as to say excited, but look, this is not to be sniffed at. As the Chancellor said there, an average earner who's earning about £36,000 will have an extra £350 that they didn't have before from taking down national insurance from 12% to 10%. Now, national insurance is effectively like a second income tax. It was for things like the NHS and stuff, but it's generally now just a second income tax, isn't it? And it's a huge, huge money earner for the government. It's the second biggest one. So this is a hit for the government. It's going to cost £9 billion to do it, and it will mean some people have some extra money. However, there is a rub to this, as there always is. Now, since 2021, we've had freezing of the rates, income tax thresholds. So that's the rate at which you start paying income tax, the rate at which you go into a higher band, because you pay in bands. And the same for national insurance threshold. It's been frozen. It's going to be frozen until 2028. That brings in something called fiscal drag. So the more money you get, you go over that, and that little proportion of your money extra gets taxed at the higher rate. Now, this fiscal drag is going to bring 4 million extra people by the time it unfreezes in 2028 into paying tax, and 3 million people into a higher tax band. So, of course, if you have more money going into your wage packet, what does that do? It creeps up and over the band, so you will be paying extra tax. So it's really going to hit those people.
Right on the border.
On the border. So actually doing the maths and looking at, because normally it goes up in line with inflation, September's inflation figure, so actually it should be going up about 6.7% this April. It's not going to be. It should have been going up. It means that, of course, more people are going to be dragged into that and paying more.
So they're not going to be better off overall when you add it all together?
And when you add it all up, well, it depends who you listen to, but the Institute for Fiscal Studies are very good at this sort of thing. They said that by the end of 2028, you're going to be paying, or the average earner is going to be actually £440 worse off, even with this national insurance cut. But look, as I said, every little helps. There are cynics suggesting the timing is a bit weird, because normally when you get these sorts of changes to tax, it comes in the start of the tax year, which is April the 6th. Again, a bit of a weird time, but that's how it works out. But January the 6th gives them a little bit of space for that to bed in so that people can feel a bit better off and maybe in preparation for an election. But look, I'm not a political journalist, I'm a finance journalist, and that's what that will mean. So if you're a higher rate taxpayer, then you will be taking home an extra £754. So but not everyone will get to benefit because, of course, pensioners who are still working, those of state pension age, don't pay national insurance. And this is what the Chancellor was saying about this is one to help the workers, because I think people have been seeing pensioners, etc., getting benefit from the triple lock. So this is one to help workers. And of course, if you earn below that threshold, which is around about £12,500, you don't pay national insurance anyway. So
one of our lovely viewers or listeners, Jethro, he did his calculations and he said that £450 average saving, if you divide that by 365 days, it's £1.23 per day.
Yeah, well, quite, actually, yes,
You know,
quite, indeed. And once you balance out how much you would have saved, etc., from the unfreezing the threshold, this year, it's really only about £2 extra a week, according to some. So, again, like I said, it's going to help because we've seen energy bills go up this January, so that will cover that. But, you know, it is a bit give and take. But the reality is there isn't a lot of wiggle room. The Chancellor used all what we call fiscal headroom in the autumn statement to do this giveaway, but the economy is stagnating. And this is where Labour will struggle with certain policies. They will really have to cost everything up because we just don't have that extra income. The economy is just not growing as we would like it to.
You haven't got time to answer this, but why is America's economy so much better? You know, they've got lower rates of inflation. I know, that's a whole other conversation,
There's a
isn't it?
whole thing we could go down in there, but yes, it depends where you look at. But yes, the economy is slightly different there, as is the stock market, as is everything else.
Georgie, good to see you. Thank you very much indeed. And as for you, Jethro, £1.38 a day may not seem a lot of money, but I'd rather have it in my pocket than give it to Jeremy Hunt. So there you go. Should we see what the weather's going to do for you today? It's Alex Burkill.
Good morning, I'm Alex Burkill here with your latest GB News weather forecast. Whilst it is going to turn much drier than of late through the weekend, it is also much colder too. As a result, some of us have woken up to a touch of frost and there are some patches of fog to watch out for. Through the day, eastern parts will be often quite cloudy, a few outbreaks of rain here, though notice in East Anglia we could see some brightness developing in the afternoon. Sunnier skies further west, a few coastal showers to watch out for. Across the far northeast of Scotland, it could be quite blustery with some showery rain for Orkney and Shetland. Temperatures will be a little bit below average for the time of year, so despite some winter sunshine, it's going to feel quite chilly. As we go through the evening and overnight, the cloud in the east is going to push a little bit further westward, so more central parts turning a bit cloudier for a time, but even so, the cloud's likely to break up at times, so there will be some clear spells around, and further west and northwest, particularly across Scotland and Northern Ireland, quite a lot of clear skies here. So again, it is going to turn quite chilly. There will be some frost around, as well as some fog or freezing fog patches for some. Some of that freezing fog then could linger well through the morning, perhaps even into the afternoon for some places, especially across central southern Scotland and for Northern Ireland too. Otherwise, across England and Wales, it's looking like a largely dry day. You couldn't rule out a few showers, mostly towards the coast, but a good deal of sunshine around. Despite the sunshine though, again, it is going to feel quite chilly. In fact, temperatures might be a little bit lower tomorrow compared to today, so a real chilly feel to things. Bye-bye.
Now, coming up, we're going to be talking to one of the country's most hardcore swimmers, and she's the sister of Bear Grylls.
No wonder she's hardcore.
Well, yeah, you'd have to be. You've got a lot to live up to. Lara Fawcett. And we're going to be looking at the crazy world of ice swimming with her in just a minute.
Your weekend starts here with Friday Night Live with me, Mark Dolan, 8 till 9 on GB News. Big stories, big guests and big laughs as we get you ready for a cracking weekend. That's Friday Night Live with Mark Dolan. Fridays 8 till 9 on GB News. Bring your own drinks. The admission's free.
In the GB Newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens. With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK, we're ready to give you accurate reporting every day. When the news breaks, we'll be there with bulletins on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Big news, big debates, big opinion. Patrick Christie's Tonight is the week's biggest show.
Every weekday, 9 to 11 p.m, we've got the inside track on the day's top stories. There'll be sharp takes you won't get anywhere else.
We will set the news agenda, not just follow it, and I want to bring you along for the ride.
Whatever it is, we'll have our finger on the pulse.
It's news, but it's this close to entertainment.
Patrick Christie's Tonight, 9 to 11 p.m, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join us every night on GB News at 11 p.m. for Headliners, which is 3 top comedians going through the next day's news stories, which is exactly what you need, because when the establishment has gone crazy, you need some craziness to make sense of it.
Headliners. You don't have to bother reading the newspaper. We've got it covered for you. Every night at 11 p.m. and repeated every morning at 5 a.m. We won't send you to sleep like some of the other paper review shows out there.
So join us 11 p.m. every night on GB News.
The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Michelle Dewberry, and I'm not here to tell you what to think. I'd much rather hear what you have to say. So, send in your opinions to gbviews@gbnews.com. Keep them clean, and you never know, I might read them out. With my panel here on Jubes & Co, we debate, we get stuck into the issues of the day on a show where all views are welcome, especially yours. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Tired of the usual focus-tested, pre-prepared Westminster runaround? Well, so am I.
So you want higher taxes?
Is your department to blame for this? Are you rethinking this policy? Every Sunday at 9:30, I'll be sitting down with those in power to get the truth about the issues affecting you.
Let's be honest, we've known about the cost pressures of this project for years, not months.
That's the Camilla Tominey Show, a politics show with personality. On GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I think the most exciting bit for me is talking to people.
People who I think are ignored often by the major news channels. We're going to give news they want to hear. There's a voice there that needs to be heard. I think there's a chance here for a diversity of opinion to be expressed, which you don't find elsewhere. It's really exciting.
We don't hold back. We're free to say how decisions that are taken here
affect us all around the country. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Good afternoon, Britain.
Good afternoon, Britain. Join us, Tom and Emily,
To find out what's happening in the heart of Westminster.
and why it matters to you.
Weekdays from midday, we bring you the most compelling stories from across the United Kingdom.
And from your doorstep to our inbox.
That's right, we want to hear from you.
GB News,
Britain's news channel.
Welcome back to Breakfast on GB News with Stephen Dixon and Pip Thompson. Now, it must run in the family because she's one of the country's most hardcore swimmers and the sister of Bear Grylls.
Ah, yes. Oh, what a family. Lara Fawcett is just one of the crazy champions who are set to descend on Cheltenham today to compete in the UK's Ice Swimming Championships.
The winners will then take part in the World Championships later in the year. Over a series of races, competitors will take to 5 Celsius water, that was pretty cold, at Sandford Lido, wearing nothing but goggles, a cap and a normal swimming costume.
I'm glad that last line was in there. I was beginning to worry for a moment. Anyway, Lara joins us now. It's really good to see you this morning. We think you must be ever so slightly crackers. What's the pleasure in ice swimming?
Can I just quickly say, there's a couple of things that are wrong. I'm not competing today in the Ice Swimming Championships.
Oh.
I competed last January in the Ice Swimming World Championships. I was part of GB, and the ones happening this weekend are the National Championships. And the next World Championships is next year in January.
Right, but when you have done it, what is the appeal of getting into freezing cold water and then swimming as far as you can? It must be really hard work.
It is hard work because it's very different to dipping in cold water. When you dip in cold water, that's great and you feel fantastic. When you get straight in and you have to swim fast, your body does have to work extra hard. So yeah, but it's very exciting and you get a real adrenaline buzz. And personally, I would far prefer to swim very hard for 3 minutes than do like a marathon or something, which was 26 miles. You get a lot of glory for a very short period of time. It's a bit like a tequila shot.
So, Lara, how did you get into it and what is the attraction for you? Because as you've just said, sort of having a little dip, and I've done an ice bath and I managed it for, I think, 5 minutes, but to actually swim, that is something else.
Okay, so the guy you just saw on the telly, Jonty, who is he's broken loads of world records, and he is on the board of the Global International Ice Swimming Association. And I met him during lockdown when we used to swim in the river in Yorkshire. And I didn't even know there was such a thing as the International Ice Swimming Association. And he was so inspiring. And then when the World Championships were happening, he said he could get me in on a wild card. But I was a bit like Eddie the Eagle. I was so rubbish compared to most people. But it was such an amazing experience.
You see,
and
now
they basically cut a swimming pool out of a lake in the Alps. This was in France, in San Juan. And this was getting ready to go in. We had all the gear.
So what is the attraction? What does it do for you?
I'm addicted to it now. I feel absolutely great. I've already been swimming this morning outside. You just feel alive. I just love the feeling of cold water. I just love it. And I now don't think twice about it, just going in. It's like, I think my body's so accustomed now. It's not, oh, it's lovely seeing these pictures. They're great.
What astounds me a little bit is that when a lot of these sort of sports, and they're for young people, if you like, or even the older people we talk to who do it, have been doing it a long time. You've clearly started this a little bit later on in life. Is that...
Are you implying I'm an old bag?
An old bag, never, never. But what is that a challenge when you start something new like this at an early middle age, shall we say, Lara?
Yeah. No, I'm 57 for the record, so no, I am old. And it was quite late in life to take it up. I've always loved swimming, and I've always loved swimming in the sea, and we grew up on the Isle of Wight, so I've always loved that. And I think it was quite humbling when I started swimming on the river in the winter in Yorkshire in lockdown to suddenly realise that actually it was far harder than I thought. And I nearly got hypothermia the first time I went swimming, because what happens, you get in, then your body sort of goes numb, and then you don't realise that the difficult thing is judging when to get out and how long to stay in for. And if you get it wrong, that's when your body can really get into trouble.
So
and the first time I did it, I was slightly showing off and I stayed in too long.
Lara, it sounds like it is potentially quite dangerous.
It is. It's absolutely dangerous if you get it wrong. Again, I make it sound like I'm talking about alcohol a lot, but it's a bit like drinking. If you have one tequila shot, you feel great. If you do it too much, you get into trouble and you get drunk. And it's the same. You have to learn to listen to your body. And people always say, how long should you stay in for? But it's so individual. It's a bit like if you're doing weight training, how heavy do you lift a thing? Everyone's individual. So this morning, for example, I was a bit late last night, wasn't feeling my best. I could tell I wasn't going to stay in that long. Also, I wanted to get ready for the telly. But if you're feeling good and you've had good night's sleep and whatever, you can stay in longer. Interestingly enough, your hands are your body's thermometer. So when you feel your fingers clawing, that's when you need to get out.
That's worth
So you
knowing.
learn to understand the signs.
Worth knowing for when you have a go.
It is worth knowing. I'll tell you what, I want to change, I'd like to change your name strap on the screen to say Laura Fawcett, not an old bag.
Lara.
Do you know, you remind me, I know you're friendly with Christine Hamilton, and you remind me of Christine a lot with that attitude. I love it. I've also got to say, because Christine...
Honestly, you have the... Yeah.
No, go on.
I was just going to say, GB News is the best news channel ever. I have it on 24/7. I love it. And I've got friends watching today who I really want to convert to watching GB News because it's great. Honestly, it's the best news channel.
Yeah, I was going to say, Christine's told me that you wanted to come on GB News to talk about this and not anywhere else. What is it that you like about what we do?
I think you give a very balanced thing. I think you get all... I think your political commentary is brilliant because you always get all sides of the argument to come on and you're not afraid to have a bit of free speech, and I love that. It's never boring.
No, never. Well,
the political commentating is brilliant.
We're never boring. That's
No,
true.
that's sure.
Just a final word before we let you go. Have you ever done any of this sort of ice swimming or wild swimming, as they call it, just in the rivers and things, with your brother?
Oh yes, he's a very keen ice swimmer. Yeah, he does it most days. But he does. I would say he doesn't swim He does more dipping, not the swimming fast. But yeah, no, we've done it together. We love it. We grew up cold swimming, actually, in this, but it was more in the summer in cold water.
So don't you ever just fancy a nice hot shower, Lara?
Oh, yes. No, I love extremes. I always have a hot bath after swimming. So the routine is swim, get cold, slightly warm up, and then go and run a really hot bubble bath. And I lie in that for ages. I love a hot bath.
All right, well, I'll tell you what, I'm going to come down, I'll bring Christine with me, and we'll do it all together, because I've never done it, and I'd like to experience it, so we'll sort that out.
With camera.
With a camera, yeah.
100%. Totally up for that.
Brilliant stuff. It's a joy to talk to you, Lara. Thanks very much indeed.
Thank you. Thanks so much. OK, bye. Have a lovely day.
Bye.
And you.
That's great.
Well, yeah, I just love it. I just love it. I mean, the idea fills me with absolute horror, but everyone you talk to who does this sort of cold stuff says, oh, you feel so fantastic.
I'll tell you what, and like I said, I've only done an ice bath, but you feel empowered.
Oh.
You feel like it's reset your body and you feel powerful, like you can take on the world.
Oh, well, there you go. That's what I need.
Rishi Sunak would benefit from doing an ice bath.
I would, yeah. Look, don't go anywhere, because believe it or not, it is Sunshine Saturday today, which may confuse you, but we'll tell you why in just a moment.
GB News is Britain's news channel, and now you can support it. All you have to do is scan that QR code that's up on your screen right now, or you can go to gbnews.com/support and become a GB News member. You'll have fantastic benefits. We're also going to organise special events where you as GB News members can meet the presenters, the on-screen faces. Scan the QR code or go to gbnews.com/support. Thank you so much.
Big news, big debates, big opinion. Patrick Christie's Tonight is the week's biggest show.
Every weekday, 9 to 11 p.m, we've got the inside track on the day's top stories. There'll be sharp takes you won't get anywhere else.
We will set the news agenda, not just follow it, and I want to bring you along for the ride.
Whatever it is, we'll have our finger on the pulse.
It's news, but it's this close to entertainment.
Patrick Christie's Tonight, 9 to 11 p.m, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Now then, Lee Anderson here. Join me on GB News on my show, The Real World, every Friday at 7 p.m.
I'm not eating bloody cat. Are you
delicious.
mental?
Open your mouth. OK, here comes a train. Reminds me of the scene in Singing in the Rain.
Adam, is that a good one?
Whoa! Join me at 7 on GB News, Britain's news channel.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my 2 comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
What you get for breakfast is something that, if we do our jobs right, you will wake up to news that you didn't know the night before.
It's a conversation. It's not just me and Eamon.
We want to get to know you, and we want you to get to know us.
From 6, it's Breakfast with Eamon and Isabel.
Monday to Thursdays on GB News,
Britain's news channel.
Wake up to the headlines with Headliners every morning at 5 a.m. We treat you to the day's biggest stories before anyone else, 7 days a week. You can catch up on everything you need to know before you've even had your kippers. Headliners every morning at 5 a.m, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Every Sunday from 11, join Michael Portillo.
There'll be topical discussion, looking at the week before and the week to come. So kick back and relax at 11 a.m. on Sundays on GB News with me, Michael Portillo. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Michelle Dewberry, and I'm not here to tell you what to think. I'd much rather hear what you have to say. So send in your opinions to gbviews@gbnews.com. Keep them clean, and you never know, I might read them out. With my panel here on Jubes & Co, we debate, we get stuck into the issues of the day on a show where all views are welcome, especially yours. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Have a great Saturday night with me, Leo Kearse, on the Saturday Night Showdown. It's a crazy world out there, so come and make fun of it with me, my panel of comedians, and a couple of people who actually know what they're talking about. The Saturday Night Showdown is your front row ticket to the clown show every Saturday. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back. It is the first Saturday of January, and for the travel industry, today is the busiest day for holiday bookings in the whole year.
I can't imagine being that organised, frankly. But the industry regulator is also warning that in a rush to book the dream vacation, consumers should make sure their holidays are protected by ATOL, so you're not scammed, and to ensure they're protected, they should go, make sure they're protected if your travel firm goes bust. Get my words out.
Joining us now is the Director of Civil Aviation Authority, Tim Johnson. Good morning to you, Tim. Good to see you this morning. Totally understandable why people are thinking of holidays together, especially with the weather we've got here in the UK at the moment. There are a lot of pitfalls, though, aren't there, here? Just tell us what the biggest ones are.
Good morning. And yes, Sunshine Saturday, one of the biggest holiday booking days of the year. And, we all put our Christmas decorations away. And I think your article on cold water swimming just now will encourage many of us to think about the summer. There are some really obvious things and simple things that passengers, customers can do to make sure that they are well protected. I think the first thing is if you're booking a package holiday, make sure that you're ATOL protected. That means in the unlikely event that your travel company ceases trading while you're away, or you've got a future booking with them, then you'll be brought home or your booking be refunded. But some other sort of really careful steps I think customers can make. Firstly, do your research on the travel company you're looking to book with. Are they a genuine outfit? Go to their website. Don't follow sort of click links you may have got on your phone. So do your research, check independent reviews, check the terms and conditions to make sure you know exactly what's included or not. And some other things as well. But with your credit card, that gives you extra protection. Take out some travel insurance. So these are relatively sort of straightforward steps that all customers, we encourage all customers to kind of make. But to make sure if you get that holiday booked for the summer, and particularly if you're booking today, you can look forward to that holiday with peace of mind. I think really important.
I mean, look, I can understand why people want to book a nice couple of weeks in the sun at this time of year. Absolutely understandable. But is it actually the best time of year to be booking? Or is there a time when perhaps there are a better time for bargains?
Well, probably the first thing to say is if you're looking at a holiday and it looks too good to be true, then it may well be too good to be true. So I would that comes back to kind of doing your research and making sure what you're booking is a really kind of genuine holiday, and those simple steps to test that. I think what we're finding is today remains a peak booking day of the year. But passengers, customers are booking sort of throughout the year. So I think sort of some patterns have changed a little bit, and some people are choosing to book a bit later. But we know that lots and lots of people sort of, particularly after Christmas, want to make sure that they're looking ahead to the summer and have got that holiday to look forward to in the summer, particularly on a grey day like today.
Where are the most popular destinations, Tim?
Well, the Mediterranean, countries around the Mediterranean remains the most popular destinations of Greece, Turkey, Canaries, Spain, Italy, France. I mean, Brits love going to those countries, and they remain the sort of mainstay of the UK travel industry. But we see lots of other parts of the world becoming increasingly popular, whether it's the Americas, Middle East, Far East, Australasia. As Brits, we love to travel. 3 in 5 of us have told us that they're intending to book an overseas holiday this year, and about half of us intend to go overseas on multiple occasions. So we love to travel. We love the experience of travelling. Last year, about 26 million people booked a package holiday from the UK, and many more beyond that travelled as well. So it's a sort of something that we really look forward to, and even after sort of COVID and the cost of living crisis, what we've seen is that propensity to and desire to travel has remained really strong amongst the British population.
Yeah, understandably so. I tell you what, we all need a bit of sunshine and a breakaway. Tim, good to see you. Thanks very much indeed. Really appreciate it. It's time this morning at 9:45 for Fake or Fact with Andrew Eborn. Good morning.
Good morning.
I feel like we should have a big sting, a big music introduction.
We love Big
for you.
Sting, and he's a lot larger now after Christmas, I can tell you. Good old Gordon Sumner.
So what are we talking about?
I'll tell you what we're going to talk about. New Year's resolution, in one year and out the other. What happens around this sort of time, and all the papers today are full of it, all sorts of diets you should be doing and all sorts of health claims. I thought we should dig a bit deeper and look at some of those health claims. So that's what we're going to do today, because who would have guessed that eating a cheese omelette with ham and a pizza and a kebab would make you into a world champion sports person? Good old littler. I would be a lot littler if I didn't do that, I can tell you. What I loved about it, so health claims, and let's start with red wine. Is red wine good for you?
Yes.
A glass is meant to be good for you, isn't it?
Do you know why? Do you remember why? The Italians, it's that Mediterranean diet, isn't it? And it's all to do with antioxidants.
Oh.
And what happens, these antioxidants, we've got pictures of people drinking at this time of the morning, which is always a joy. But just one, you have to do everything in moderation. And what they're saying, these antioxidants are really good for the blood and get you going. They actually say it can make you look more attractive.
Really?
Thank you.
Well, even with your red tongue.
Even with the red tongue.
Glass.
But what happens is, because you get a little bit blush, so you get a bit of red going on, your muscles relax. As a result, your face doesn't look so tense and everything else. But they all say that everything in moderation. So you both said it was right. I'll give you both a point for that, which is fantastic.
Thank you very much.
I'm generous like that.
The problem is, but you see, you can see why it's a sort of con.
Yes.
Because people just say red wine is good for you, and therefore they drink half a bottle,
well,
and then it's not good for you.
The reality is it's all in moderation, and actually there are better ways of getting these antioxidants. If you eat berries, for example, eat strawberries and blueberries and various other things.
Green tea, is that
Green tea is lovely. I like green tea. Well, do that as well, but there's a good excuse. What I love is like wishful thinking, isn't it? So is red wine better than white wine? What do you think?
I think it is, although I actually don't drink red wine.
OK.
But I think it is. I think it's got better benefits.
OK.
I can't exactly tell you.
I would say no, I would say they're probably about the same.
About the same. Well, I can tell you, you're absolutely right, Pip. Red wine is better because it's got more antioxidants, because to make the red wine, they put in the skin and the pips and things like that as well. Also, it's got less fat than white wine. So I'm going to give you a point.
Fat in white wine?
Yeah. There's more grams of fat. There's lots of sugar.
Think how much calories are in a glass of wine?
Oh, yeah, I never thought there was any fat in it.
Well, that's what they say. It's got less on that sort of basis. So,
I see. I mean, it'll make you less fat.
It'll make you less fat, because there's more sugar in it, I think, on that sort of thing.
OK.
What we love, though, talking about the benefits, and it's going all the way back to Bacchus and the Roman times and things like that. The French are notoriously famous for drinking their red wine, and they have a great, talk about the Mediterranean diets like the Italians. Did the French school children used to drink wine at school?
Yes, because somebody sent me this. My brother, God love him, sent me this the other day, and it was really... I need to find it now. He messaged me, and they did. And I've got the information.
Oh, look at you. This is this interesting moment.
On this basis, I'm going to say no.
Oh, thank goodness. Did your brother not send
Until
it?
1956, French children attending school were served wine on their lunch breaks.
Yes.
Each pupil was entitled to 4 glasses a day.
Isn't that extraordinary?
Is that true?
It is. You're saying true, you're saying it's fake. Well, Pip, your brother was absolutely right. It used to be true. They changed the rules, and basically around that sort of time, you're right, they basically changed it, so only those over 14 could do it. But we've got pictures, here they are.
Incredible.
We've got some wonderful pictures of them. This, they used to serve all the wine, whatever it is, on that sort of basis.
We couldn't even get milk.
We could have. Oh, I remember milk. Do you remember doing milk in the early days?
I
You used to love that sort of stuff.
But can you imagine that now?
Can you imagine that now?
Schools in the UK.
Oh, it'd be brilliant.
I wouldn't. I'll tell you what, lunch break would be good, wouldn't it? He's so quiet, the children. But that's what they used to do, and they changed the rules as recently as that.
Everyone would be going to the breakfast clubs, wouldn't they?
Would they love it? They did that, and they couldn't care less. But that's what they used to do. So fantastic stuff. So it was, and the idea was, it wasn't to get them drunk. It was basically to get them used to the taste of it.
Which is why they don't have a binge drinking problem.
Isn't that right? And
Because
you look at those sort of things.
It's served with every meal.
Yeah.
It's social activity.
Isn't that amazing? I'll tell you what, another interesting fact, which I was looking at, it's cold Christmas time, and you go skiing. Do you go skiing, either of you do? You ski?
No.
Do you do dry January?
Well, I don't drink anyway. I do dry every year.
Oh, dry every... I do dry January. I have dry white wine, dry gin, dry... Thank you. But one of the great things about it, if you go skiing, they always have these pictures of these St Bernards, and round them they have little barrels of... What's in the barrels?
It's brandy, I think.
Brandy, OK.
I don't know, but I think the brandy was overtaken by a company for advertising.
You think that's right? Well, we've got a picture.
Yeah. What is it? I
It
don't
could be
know
right.
what
Well,
it is.
here's
Is it
some bourbons in
cognac
there.
or something?
Cognac, that could be interesting. So, I'll make it easy then, fake or fact, did the St Bernards have cognac in barrels around their neck to help skiers in distress?
Yes.
No.
They're used in rescues.
Yeah, very good, yes. And no. Pip, you're absolutely wrong. They didn't. It is one, and I was shocked. I was shocked to find this out myself. They never had it. It is a complete myth that St Bernards used to, in that lassie sort of way, they would go into there with their barrels.
Who started that?
I'll tell you who started it. It was an artist called Edwin Henry Landseer, and I dug up this picture, which is glorious. And he's actually an English artist from 1820, 20 minutes past 6, and 1820. And Landseer, he did this when he was 17 years old, and this particular work is titled Alpine Mastiff Reanimating a Distressed Traveller.
That's a catchy title.
Thank you, yes, it will catch on gloriously on that sort of basis. So that's what happened, so it's a complete myth. So well done, Stephen's neck and neck.
I've done their neck and neck. I've done far better than Stephen.
No, you haven't. He's always right.
Well, it's always it's favouritism. That's what happens. You work on that sort of basis. Chocolate. You like a bit of chocolate. So is chocolate good for you?
Yes, if it's over.
Is this your brother again?
Of cocoa.
Oh, look at you!
No, but it's got to be over. It's got to be something like 60-70% cocoa.
Very good. Okay.
Yeah.
Stephen?
Well, I would say yes. It's a good excuse.
It does sound like a great excuse. Well, I can tell you that actually it is absolutely very, very good for you. And what happens? You can actually lose weight. So it's a hunger suppressant, but the secret is this. It has to have it. You mustn't have the sugar and you mustn't have the milk, all the things that make it taste extra special. So, and I think the Queen used to have one piece of dark chocolate.
Very dark chocolate.
100% is perfect, because it will basically, it has all sorts of...
That doesn't taste very nice.
Well, it's very bitter, like a lot of people in television.
Point,
Can I add a point? I'll do a point for you. You are right. You worked on that sort of basis, and that's what they used to do. So you have this sort of glorious chocolate. I think we've got pictures of chocolate and stuff like that. But if ever you want to increase your mood, it's got great value on that sort of basis. So I was speaking to one of the Queen's chocolatiers, and they used to work for the Rothschilds. They had their own chocolatiers, a guy called Chris Dodd, and he would basically tell him all about this. He went on this wonderful thing to Peru, and we got some pictures. Do you know where chocolate comes from?
Peru?
Like Paddington. It looks good. It does come from... But it comes
there you go.
from... What
Give
sort
me
of
a
bean?
point. Give me a point.
What sort of bean does it come from?
Chocolate.
Cacao, isn't it?
Cacao is very good. And you know why it's called cacao? A point for that.
That's really
It's called cacao as opposed to cocoa. And you know why they had that vowel movement? It was because... I think it was... It was an unfortunate vowel movement. Because what happened, there was a person who was in the docks at the time. They spelt it wrong. And they were too embarrassed to do it right. But cacao is basically that sort of thing. And they would harvest these wonderful cacao things. They're big cocoa beans or cacao beans. And they look a bit like garlic, but taste a lot better on that sort of basis. And you have these wonderful things, so incredible health benefits. It's the food of the gods is what they call it.
Oh, yeah, it doesn't stop my appetite. We've got 1 minute or 30 seconds.
1 minute. Water, finally. People say you have to drink 8 glasses of water every single day. Is that fake or fact?
Fake.
Facts.
OK, well, I can tell you, for the championship, Stephen is absolutely right. It is complete rubbish. You don't have to do it. People don't know where it came from. You do have to be hydrated, but you don't have to take separate water. You get water from other drinks that you have, some of which we've outlined today.
What's the craze now is those massive water...
Yeah, you get a hernia trying to... I've seen that.
Huge things.
That's for in, there's another one for out, so you work on that sort of basis. Extraordinary. So 8 glasses of water is a myth. Just stay hydrated.
Stay dehydrated.
Don't stay dehydrated. Stay hydrated, and that will keep you very healthy. But you can do that with other things as well. Normal food, normal drink, and so on and so forth.
Not wine.
Well, you can wine will help.
You could wine, yeah, you could. You just have lots of it to make sure you... Yeah, anyway, there you go. Look, Andrew, it's been a joy.
And Stephen is today's winner, so well done, Stephen. Hurrah!
Thank you very much indeed.
Yeah, well done.
I'm surprisingly pleased at that. That's it from us. Good to have your company. Peter and Ellie are here next.
A brighter outlook with Box Solar, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Good morning, I'm Alex Burkill here with your latest GB News weather forecast. Whilst it is going to turn much drier than of late through the weekend, it is also much colder too. As a result, some of us have woken up to a touch of frost and there are some patches of fog to watch out for. Through the day, eastern parts will be often quite cloudy, a few outbreaks of rain here, though notice in East Anglia we could see some brightness developing in the afternoon. Sunnier skies further west, a few coastal showers to watch out for. Across the far northeast of Scotland, it could be quite blustery with some showery rain for Orkney and Shetland. Temperatures will be a little bit below average for the time of year, so despite some winter sunshine, it's going to feel quite chilly. As we go through